Yo, guys, Theo here on Common Sense. Welcome to another episode of Human Beings, the podcast where we're very interested in individuals, not just who they are today, but how they ended up that way. In line with the divine, I rhyme all the time. Today, I'm joined by another sort of natural bodybuilder kind of person. I didn't need to only bring on those kinds of people, but of course, that's a big interest of mine. So there's going to be a few I'm in touch with. And what I try to do differently here, though, is not only talk about the training, but little other things. Today's guest is a natural bodybuilder, a sort of silver era inspired bodybuilder, I think, a coach, an author, content creator, odd lifter, father, and husband. You often see him lifting heavy objects, wearing jeans in a parking lot in the sun. He's known by Atlaspowershrugged. That's all we know him by. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. This is a cool format. I watched your podcast with GBS recently, and it's definitely a refreshing change from the more standard just how do you live. Nothing wrong with that. I love talking about lifting, but
Mm.
it's nice to get into some other details as well. So thank you very much. And by the
Yeah,
way, congratulations. You just recently hit 20K on YouTube. That's a lot harder today than it has been in years past. So congratulations.
no, thanks a lot, man, for all of that. Yeah, I am very much into, like I said in the intro, I'm very into natural bodybuilding and training, and I can get very deep into nerding out about just that. But the way I got into it is because, I don't know how much you know about my backstory, but I was pretty much my polar opposite, drinking, partying, not exercising, not eating well, hitting rock bottom, and then finding training, and then first starting to train just to feel better, but finding that I actually really enjoy this with training for building a good physique and getting stronger. And so I always have that kind of perspective. And so even when we're going to talk about that, I like to keep it a little bit holistic at times. I just wanted to tell a little funny story right before here. I wanted to literally warm up by going to the sauna. And so there's a sauna in the apartment building here, but I had to go out and just go over we go outside to another door, go and turn on the sauna. And when I got out, there were two kids, like boys, like 7, 8 years old. And they said like, "Oh, what big muscles you have." And to be clear, this is not when I'm coming all steamy hot with a towel afterwards. It's when I'm coming with a shirt. And, being on social media and stuff, you get a little numb to like praise on your physique. But I got to say, that was one of the nicest feeling
Mhm.
compliments I got in a long time.
Mhm.
Then there's a second part to the story that I'm not quite as enthusiastic about sharing. But when I was in the sauna, I actually slipped and fell on my ass and elbow. And so I'm worried that I can't properly train tomorrow, but we'll see. But yes, tell us,
Oh no.
Atlas. I'll call you Atlas today. Tell us about a little bit about yourself today and what you're about.
Well, first, I just wanted. I'm sitting here in Los Angeles, one of the most dystopian cities in America. So I'm just picturing you're going to the sauna. I'm just picturing this, just this pristine, like Nordic. There's probably like snow and ice crystals and like caribou frolicking about, and you're. I'm just picturing your apartment building all like colorful with a wonderful wooden sauna and just. I'm picturing these kids as like, rosy cheeked with, little furry hats and just everything wonderful. Hearing all this,
That's
um,
exactly what it looks
it's
like.
probably not it's probably not quite like that, but I'm just picturing this pristine Nordic environment. It sounds very picturesque. I hope your injury heals up, but I'm sure you'll be
I
fine.
think I didn't injure myself.
Um,
I think I just bruised my elbow a little bit, but thank you.
You got to watch out for the glute injuries, though. I used to work carpet cleaning when I was a lot younger, and I was carrying a big dehumidifier, I don't know how much it weighed, maybe like 80, 100 pounds or something up the stairs, and fell and hit my ass on one of the steps, and got a huge bruise. And it still looks different to this day. Like my glute muscle is shaped differently on that side to this day. It didn't cause any serious injury, but it definitely changed the shape. So you got to watch out for those.
Yeah.
But now that we've both shared a little bit of a funny story,
Hmm.
where do you want me to start?
I'm gonna want to hear a bit about, like I always want on this podcast, a little bit about your background too, just how you grew up and all that. But just introduce yourself. How would you describe who you are today or what you're about?
So what I'm about, I would say physical excellence for regular folks. That's kind of I had to try to come up with an elevator pitch because as anyone follows me on Instagram knows I'm a little bit wordy. So that's kind of my pitch. I get labeled sometimes as the old school lifts guy, and I've gotten into those a lot. But really, I'm just trying to bring back physical excellence for regular people who are doing other stuff. Like for me, I'm raising a family right now, starting my business and everything. And, I'm not a professional athlete. I'm not taking a bunch of drugs to excel at the superhuman levels, but I'm also not satisfied with just going to the gym or even just, doing dad workouts with some kettlebell swings and
Mhm.
burpees. Let's try to find a way to, achieve some sort of excellence in whatever limited form that's, accessible to regular people. So I try to focus on a little bit more advanced stuff that nevertheless could be applicable to maybe more intermediate advanced natural lifters and getting them to something that's not just, good, but, really exceptional in some way. You know what I mean? And,
Mm.
obviously my way is strength and, physique. Obviously I'm not a hybrid athlete who, can do all this while running, 20, 40 miles or whatever the case may be, but would like to incorporate some more agility into it if I don't know if it's going to be possible. I mean, with a family, but I would at some point like to get into parkour.
Mm.
I think my eldest will be really good at that whenever she gets a little bit older, so I might do that with her. But anyway, that
Mm.
went on too long. That's what I'd say I'm
Yeah,
about now.
no, that was great. No, I know what you mean. That I don't know how long you've been lifting and doing this for, but when you get into it, maybe you find like I really like this, and you kind of focus on one area, then you just realize, oh, I'd like to try this too, and maybe that too.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, of course you can take on more things, but there's a limit to how many things. Like people ask me about certain things, like, "Oh, do you want to get into martial arts?" I'm like, "Yes." Do you want to try climbing? Like, "Yes." More cardio? Yes. Like I'd love to do all of that, but one thing at a time. I think probably actual training. I actually would like to get into dancing because I'm quite musical. I have a musical background. Actually, I'm wearing just by chance a shirt it's by the old men's choir I was in. Um, and so I have the rhythm, and of course, when you train, you have you're in touch with your body, you're strong, kind of flexible. But I feel very clumsy when I move, so I'd love to get better at that. And maybe some kind of martial art. But yeah, just just some stats on you, like how old are you and how tall are you? How much do you weigh? Since we're bodybuilders and that.
So I'm 35, 6'0", actual 6'0". Everybody thinks I'm taller, but that's because everybody who's this is in American measurements. I don't know what that is in kilograms. I don't think that's what you guys use to measure height, but in
Well,
American measurements, I'm 6 feet 0 inches, and that is yeah. Everyone thinks I'm 6'1" or 6'2" because like everyone who's 5'10" and above just says they're 6 feet. But I've been taller than a lot of people who are 6'1", but I'm in fact 6'0" if I ever get measured by
That's a
those
funny,
fellows
that's
that
like an
like me.
American thing that people like
Yeah,
lie about their height. Because I've been asked several times about my height, and they're like, your
yeah,
actual height, please. It's like, I've never lied about my height. Why would I do that? It would just be embarrassing when you see me.
yeah. I mean, I'll if I ever end up in the place where those fellows who bullied Mike Van Wyck, apparently what's his name, Eric Kanevsky, the huge dude, and
Yeah.
his buddy Tanner, the kind of scary martial arts dude. Yeah, apparently they just bullied Mike Van Wyck so hard that he had to go take it out on poor Jeff Nippard. So that's
Oh,
kind of the backstory. He was just they were just mocking him for being a coward who wasn't willing to fight like incessantly until he just like had to find someone to take out his aggression on.
and he
And of
picked
course he had
Jeff.
to pick someone who's 5'4" and nice. But anyway, yeah. So if they ever come measure me, I'll happily do the tape measure. But yeah,
Mm.
6'0", 35 years old, two anywhere between 212 and 216 right now
Okay.
in American pounds.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a little less than 100 kilograms for those of you in pristine Nordic wilderness.
Yeah, yeah, it's something like 90 to 9 or like 92 to 95 kilos. And I think you're 183 centimeters then. But also, so we have some good topics. We have some overlap. I mean, definitely in part inspired by you, I tried some of the more unconventional lifts, but fasting is something. Another, I guess, not unconventional, but within mainstream fitness, it's not so common that you do that. So we're going to get into that. But tell us a little bit about just your childhood, how you grew up, kind of your family situation there, and whatever you want to share from your origin story, as I like to call it.
Oh, yeah, I grew up in the deep South. For those of you who are not in America, one of the I guess more rural back. Well, I didn't grow up like in a rural area, but I grew up like in a suburb and in the allegedly poorest, most backward state in the country. I'm not so sure because I moved to Los Angeles as an adult, and I actually ended up. I'm getting ahead of myself, but whatever. I'll cover that later. But yeah. Anyway, I ended up teaching college students in Los Angeles, and I was asking the professor I was working under, hey, are these like English as a second language students? Like, did they come from another country? Should I go easy on them? He's like, no, they just were in LA public schools. So I kind of question the idea that Mississippi, the state I was raised in, is the most backward and
Mm.
impoverished state in the country because these kids clearly had it a lot worse. I've had a pretty good quality of education, but who knows, man? Like things things are weird. Anyway, yeah. So I grew up in the deep South. But my parents weren't really from there. My dad was a conservation biologist, so that's not really quite. And my mom's a college professor, so not quite your typical background in that area. Um,
Mm.
they actually, unlike pretty much all millennials, they actually stayed married and like didn't do anything crazy and were good parents. So I think I had this kind of little superpower that I had. I actually had, and to top it off, my dad was actually extremely fit. Well, he still is. He's
Mm.
still he's still a beast. Not lifter. He's never lifted, but he just does body weight stuff. Just keeps really active.
Nice.
He's still cranking out like 70 dips. Now he kind of shortchanges
Wow.
the depth a little bit. I'm giving him a hard time, but he's a beast. It definitely he would always beat me at endurance running and everything. I eventually got stronger in terms of like one rep max stuff, but yeah. So I had a lot of advantages growing up. My parents stayed together. My dad was actually fit, so that's a pretty helpful thing.
Mm.
You have a
Great.
lot of a lot of people in my generation didn't have that, which is kind of crazy because I don't know what their problems were. Like they didn't, we there were really no problems at that time, so I don't know why people couldn't keep it together. But like God, I look back at the night. This is all in the '90s because I'm old now. But it looked like looking back at it is kind of like it's almost like a vision of the '50s. You know what I mean? Like where things seemed you know, completely different than they are now and just not as messed up. I don't know how it is over there and your side of the pond, but
Oh, it's kind of
here,
messed up.
things have just completely deteriorated. So yeah, that I felt like so that was, fairly wholesome, Um as far as fitness, this is another crazy thing. I'm being a complete boomer here, but I always remember feeling like I was one of the fatter kids in class when I was in like elementary school through middle school, and it's crazy because I would have been I was never like the fattest kid. I was never like fat, but I was a little bit chubby, just a little bit chubby, right? And that
Hmm.
made me like one of the fatter kids in the class.
Hmm.
And then if you look at the kids these days, like I would have been the skinniest kid in class now, so it's kind of crazy. But yeah, I just had a big appetite, and my parents bought into the nutritional dogma at the time. So everything was like low fat, high
Yeah.
carb, like, they followed the rules. They actually, they weren't like eating trash diet. They tried to do healthy.
Hmm.
They tried very hard to do healthy food, but it was the '90s. So very bad advice at that time. And, on that, you have a kid with a big appetite, um, eating that food, he's going to overeat a little bit. So
Hmm.
anyway, by early high school, I decided I needed to get in shape to get girls and stuff. So I just started skipping meals. This is back in the day, so
Yeah.
I didn't even think to go online and say, how do I lose weight? It's just like, well, if I eat less, so I'm just not going to bring a lunch to school. So I just started, not bringing my lunch to school some days and not eating. And lo and behold, I dropped 60 pounds in the first semester of ninth
Mm.
grade, and then started, just doing some chin ups and push ups. And the crazy thing was, I would have been mocked to oblivion on social media these days by these 16-year-olds deadlifting 800 pounds. But like
Mm.
that was enough to get me to be one of the most in shape kids in my high school. Like, I had a little bit of visible muscle tone that actually like set me apart from my peers. It's crazy
Mm.
how physique inflation has gone, which, in some ways it's a good thing. You don't want the kids to be on steroids if they just do it naturally. But you do see some natural kids who just have so much more information than I did that are
Yeah.
doing crazy things in high school. Like, kids, I see kids who are like, 18, search or deadlifting 315. It's like, damn, man, I didn't even know what a conventional deadlift was. I didn't figure out any of that stuff at that time.
Mm.
But yeah, so that's kind of, it was a different time back then. Some ways
Just
good,
what,
some ways bad.
just a comment there that it is a matter of perspective. This what is really fit or something, because especially now you and me working on social media and stuff, like our image, what fit is kind of warped really. And probably I'm guessing you're just like I am, quite self-aware of this. But I could just think back to now. I've trained for a bit over 6 years now. When I had trained for like 1 year, I would still, if I went to a party or something, could be like, man, those biceps, I was kind of what you described. It's like, okay, I'm kind of lean. I have a bit of muscle on my entire frame. That's pretty much
Mhm.
it. So it's very much a matter of perspective, but I'm sure it's true also that people have access to more information and actually get stronger earlier on average or something. But yeah, please go on.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was what I don't know if they still use this terminology. Back in the old 4chan days, I would have been called otter mode. I did competitive judo all throughout high school. We didn't have wrestling in Mississippi because at that time, I don't know if it's still the case now, but at that time, it was kind of like the intersection of like homophobia and exercise phobia. So like anything that wasn't explicitly American football, like was looked on with deep suspicion, especially if you're grabbing on sweaty men. You're not that's not going to be tolerated in that. No one's going to get into that. So I did judo instead, where same thing, but you're wearing more appropriate clothing, so you don't have it's not quite as
Mm. Skin
it,
against
I mean
skin.
it was still, it was still not popular. That was kind of why I quit it. There were just too few people doing it. I didn't have the regular training partners. I'd show up to the gym like on a Saturday and there'd be nobody for me to train with. And then I'd sleep in the next week and then they'd be blowing up my phone. Hey, where are you? We want to train and we need you. It's like, that got frustrating. So when I went to college, I started weightlifting just initially just because I kept getting thrown around as a 178 pound, 6 feet, 178, in shape. I could do a lot of push ups, a lot of pull ups, run. Well, I did cross country and for like half a semester in high school. I was in good shape, but I was not strong for my size, and I was getting thrown around by guys, half a foot shorter than me and 10 years older. So I started weightlifting and just grew a lot. And I just really liked that I could make progress by myself, training whenever I wanted. It was all on me. I didn't have to worry about having the right training partners or are they going to show up? Are they not? Do I have to be here at this time? I can just go in and it's all me. I've always been a little bit. I've always been comfortable in my own company, so
Mm.
I was so that it was nice to just be able to just get in there. I didn't know a single thing about lifting. I kind of just went in. I knew about about bench press. Everybody does, but at that
Mm.
time, no one knew about powerlifting. Powerlifting wasn't. It was a very niche thing. It wasn't. It wasn't like everyone did it. So I didn't really necessarily know about. I didn't know about deadlifts or anything like that. I knew about bench press. So I went and did it. My college was small enough that the football team actually worked out with the general population. So I watched what they did. I saw them doing power cleans. I didn't know what they were, but I just copied them. I saw them squatting, so I did that. And then eventually found out about deadlifts later. I got Arnold's book, Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, and started following that like 1 or 2 years in. And that was enough to make pretty good progress. So yeah.
Mm.
Um, I guess you want more of the human side. What
Yeah, if you have
what should
anything,
I?
sure. Like I say, it's up to you. How much
Yeah,
or what?
yeah. I mean, I'll go back. Kind of. I feel like I'm the only person in social media fitness who wasn't like bullied growing up. And it wasn't just me. I mean, I felt like my high school was actually chill. Like everybody talks about their high school stories, and it sounds like just this kind of feral apocalyptic setting with like roving packs of bullies just like tormenting anyone who wasn't perfect. And I mean, it's my school really wasn't like that. More for the most part, people just got along. Um, I mean, there were a couple kids who got bullied, and I'm not endorsing it, but I will say that I do understand why they were the ones that were picked. And I'm not endorsing it, but like it wasn't like anyone who just displayed any kind of difference from normal was singled out and relentlessly picked on. Like some really annoying kids got picked on a little bit, but yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Maybe
Mm,
maybe I just went to a weird high school, but yeah, there no one really got bullied at my school or anything, and it was kind of chill. So yeah, I didn't get into this just because people picked on me or anything, which is really weird.
mm,
I also never got like I didn't really get like cheated on or dumped or anything, but so I just kind of wanted to do it. I didn't
mm,
I Yeah, I wanted to wanted to be stronger. Initially, I didn't care as much about like being super big or strong. I wanted to just be better at judo. But
mm,
you get into something where you can make a lot of progress, and that just gets addicting. And eventually, and it's probably better that way anyway because it's probably something I'm more talented at. But
mm,
whatever. Yeah,
mm. Okay,
yeah. So
interesting. Yeah, well, me, I didn't get bullied or anything, but for me, it was literally, I gotta do something because I went through this hellish time where it was clear that I treated myself like shit for a long time. And so for me, it just started, I'll try to train and eat a bit and see if that works. And it definitely worked very fast. And then when I was younger, I kind of wanted to train, but then it was all about like, I want to look good for girls, basically. And so now I kind of just
mhm.
noticed that, oh, when I just wanted to take good care of myself, I kind of got the kind of results I wanted before. And now I can enjoy that and have fun with that, but it's not the end all be all or the first priority. It's just I can enjoy that while building myself up and taking good care of myself.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely the priority for me, and it kind of worked. I mean, looking back at it now, like I wildly underachieved in that department relative to what I could have done. But you grow up, you don't. I mean, I didn't get I didn't get told that much bad advice. I just didn't get any kind of advice or any kind of idea. You're kind of a lot of the assumptions that just come from the cult. My parents didn't really tell me anything, but like a lot of the assumptions you just get from culture obviously are completely
Mm,
wrong. So yeah, I mean, looking back, I wildly underachieved, but you live and learn, and eventually, figure it out. Hopefully, yeah, yeah, man. So that's kind of yeah.
yeah, no,
I guess
sure.
that's kind of the background. So I went into I got into college because that's what you do, right? You don't. I mean, that was the time before it was clear that college was kind of a well, it wasn't a trap for me because I got to go to college for free because my mom taught there, and that's a benefit of you know, that's a benefit with that job. So you get free tuition. So I didn't
Mm,
get loaded down with student debt for that. But then I
mm,
managed to get loaded down with student debt anyway because I went to grad school because I didn't have a clear idea of what next. I majored in
mm,
psychology. Um,
mm,
what do you do with that? I don't know. Get a master's and then maybe you can go teach, whatever.
mm,
Got to the master's. I moved out to California to go to a master's program in psychology. Realized that science was a complete basket case disaster where people were just being forced to churn out studies, potentially taking many liberties to make them look the way they needed to. Because if you don't, you end up getting fired after 7 years because you don't get tenure, which is absolutely brutal because you've probably built up your whole life. You may have a mortgage, kids that are in school by now, and everything like completely depending on this job. And oh well, the research you spent these 7 years doing didn't pan out with the results that you want, so you don't get to publish in a prestigious journal. So you're fired. You probably can't live in this town anymore because there are no other universities in this town, and you're going to have a hard time getting a job anywhere. So, good luck. That's kind of the life of a professor. So
Mm.
I saw that, and I was like, okay, this is like I was also I was in experimental psychology at the time that the replication crisis broke out in experimental psychology. This fellow by the name of Daryl Bem, real big shot in social psychology. I'd seen him in the textbooks in undergrad. Published a study claiming to show extrasensory perception. Like he was literally claiming that people were predicting like what numbers were going to show up on a computer screen in the future, and
Mm.
obviously very bad methods, but just based on how prestigious this guy's name was, he actually got it published in the most prestigious like journal in social psychology. So
Mm.
yeah, that got a lot of people saying, "Wait, what is going on here? This is not good. Does any of this other stuff actually hold up?" And I kind of participated in a project to kind of investigate that, try to replicate some of the results, and yeah, most of them did not replicate. People were not happy about having their data looked at. It was a disaster. So yeah, I bounced from that and got into some completely different lines of work for quite a few years. Um, During that time, I got up to a pretty good point in strength and physique. Okay, strength and physique. It was pretty good at that time, but as like physique inflation increased, it got progressively less impressive. But I kind of stagnated for almost a decade, really. And
Mhm.
then when the lockdowns hit in 2020, I couldn't go to the gym anymore. Couldn't do the same power building routines that I'd gotten into. That we all talk about power building. I was
Mm.
just doing the same thing: squat, bench, deadlift, plus some accessories. I'd experimented with some other stuff, but mostly that was my thing. So I couldn't
Mm.
do that anymore. Got stuck with at home with just a barbell and a couple plates. Um, so that's how I got into the old time lifts, because I knew the old time lifters had gotten a whole lot done with very minimal equipment. I'd always read the Chaos and Pain blog. Do you remember that one by Jamie Lewis?
No.
He goes by what does he go by now? Um, why am I blanking? Plague of Strength now. He goes by Plague of Strength
Okay.
now.
Yeah, it sounds
I don't
familiar.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know why there was the rebrand. I thought Chaos and Pain was a cool name, but yeah, he talked about all the old time guys, and yeah, I didn't get in. I don't think he did. He didn't do all that much of their lifts, especially not like complicated stuff like Arthur lifts and bent presses. But he talked about them, so I knew it was out there, and stuck with nothing else to do, not able to do the stuff that I was overly attached to emotionally. I had to figure something out, and lo and behold, it started working really, really well. As I got better at those, got better results. I started trying to improve. That led me to realizing I need to improve my mobility to get better at this stuff, and you know, a lot of that just led to me progressing a lot more in my mid 30s with now small children than I had in my 20s,
Mm.
um, which is startling because I'm at the age where you're supposed to go on TRT because it's all over for you. Your joints are supposed to deteriorate. You're supposed to go on testosterone replacement, and life's all downhill. But here I am. I made the best, not the best. I mean, obviously, I made really good gains in my early 20s, but I just kind of skyrocketed and then plateaued, and I didn't really cruise off that plateau until my mid 30s, with now two kids and a third on the way. So it just goes to show that if you actually improve your training, improve your variety, start getting into those details that maybe the power building style of training leaves out in a lot of cases, there's a whole lot left more on the table. So yeah, that's kind of where I am in my background.
Mm.
I I always thought this fitness thing was just going to be a hobby, but other,
Mm.
let's just say, a lot of things in the world, a lot of professions in the world. This won't be saying too much. A lot of professions are that were previously good professions have become a lot less satisfying to work in than they previously were. I think that covers a whole lot of professions. I think a lot of people would say that. So now I'm making a go of it full time, online fitness coaching, you know, selling books, programs, things of that nature. So
Yeah.
So far, it's been really rewarding, and I think it's the best thing I've ever done with my life professionally. So I'm excited.
Yeah, awesome. You touch on many things I want to get into, but so do I get you right that you're not a science-based fitness influencer?
No, I'm not. But ironically, it's because I have a better science background than like 98% of them.
Mm.
Just because I studied science in a serious field, and I hate to say that because psychology is kind of a joke. It's not a serious field at all. But the thing about psychology is even though a lot of the key experiments are made up, even I don't know if you do you remember reading about the Milgram experiment and the Ash experiments back in the day. These are conformity experiments from either like the 50s or 60s. One of them showed or purported to show that if a dude in a lab coat told you to administer a shock to another study
Ah,
participant,
this one, yeah.
you
Mm.
would you would just like most people would just keep like doing it even to the point where they thought they killed them. So so that even stuff like that apparently a lot of people didn't actually believe it, or potentially there were some just issues with just kind of making the results be what they want them to be. But yeah, that was back in the day. Now the pressures, like I said, are just so they're just so crushing that I don't blame people for making up results just to you know feed their families, literally. Um, but yeah, I mean, even though psychology is kind of a joke field in some ways, and like a lot of it's just made up, they do make sure that on paper, if you read the study, the research methods look pristine. Like their I's are dotted, their T's are crossed, they have the statistics right, all that good stuff. And they're very picky about that because so much in the field is silly, and they're very insecure in comparison to more of the hard sciences, deservedly so, because the hard sciences are, you know, more reputable. So they kind of in a way cope with good research methods. And again, like they may be making it up. They may not have even run the study. They may have just made up their data set as it's come out in a lot of cases where they just completely made up made up their data set. But it looks good on paper, right? So you come from that background and then you look at an exercise study and it's like you guys are not I would when I was teaching research methods to undergrads, I would have been critiquing this study even if they'd run that as an experiment in class. Like what is this? You're not doing any of the basics. You're not following any of the rules. This is terrible. So yeah, that's why I'm not at all science based. Just because I tutored statistics. I taught research methods. So yeah, you're not going to pull the wool over my eyes as far as that goes.
Mm. So you weren't excited when like lengthened partials were all the rage?
No, I mean, I like it. I like that now we're emphasizing, something that bodybuilders have known for a very, very long time is good.
Mm.
Because I
That's
mean,
what
to
I
be honest, like, yeah, I mean, the field really got dumbed down a lot from kind of, I don't know, maybe the 2000s to, maybe like 2020. Let's just say the field of just kind of the general fitness culture got really, really dumbed down at that time, I feel. And so it's good that a lot more complexity is kind of entering back into it. But at the same time, people do all this stuff based on experience, and they had kind of the pragmatic experience to actually apply it a little bit better, I think, than you see in a lot of the science based community. But yeah, I am glad to see them like at least trying new things. But
mm.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think it's funny, because specifically that the lengthened partial thing is like I had already noticed from my own science in the gym that this emphasizing the stretched position seems to be good for hypertrophy. Like I often get sore from those kind of exercises. I've seen a lot of
mm-hmm.
progress with that, and because I am someone that my style is I train at quite a high intensity a lot of the time. On many exercises, I would, as a sort of mechanical drop set, end up doing lengthened partials. And I think that after
Mm-hmm.
everything they went through now with the studies and that's where they kind of concluded that, well, it is as efficient to do lengthened partials only as through full range of motion. So what you can do is take the set to failure within a full range of motion, and then you can do the lengthened partial. I mean, like, yeah, that's what I've been doing all along. But so I just want to, for the people that don't know you quite as well and maybe are into fitness, but not necessarily more mainstream side of things, but maybe the more regular stuff, I would say, because that's like my impression. I followed you for, I think, a bit over 2 years or something. And of course, what catches the eye when I see you is like the unconventional lifts, you know. So I guess, I mean, now you told us that you pretty much started because of the lockdown and you had a barbell and kind of that was something you could do, but you still do them, you know. So if I ask you, why do you do them? Like these more unconventional lifts?
Well, I mean, if I'm that's kind of my thing. I obviously I've experimented with a lot of this stuff. It's something that I've always prioritized. I kind of see it as like a research and development budget. You got to, if you know, put some of your training time into experimenting with new things. A lot of it's going to be a bad experiment that doesn't work, but you know, just like any corporation that wants to grow, not like in this quarter, but you know, 20 years from now, if you put in a good research and development budget into exploring new avenues, it will pay off down the road in some cases. So I've always experimented with a bunch of stuff. And that being said, I mean, you have to be critical about like what is working and what isn't. So there's a lot
Mm,
of stuff I've experimented with that I no longer do. If I'm still doing an unconventional lift, it's because it's the best tool for the job, at least for me in the circumstances that I'm in.
yeah,
That's kind of been my focus instead of like just I don't want to just be the odd lifts guy who does you know, because there's a lot of just like doing something weird to show off on
yeah,
Instagram, and you know, I'll do some of that too. Obviously, some of it's fun. Like, and usually, I think it's fairly clear when I'm just like showing off for fun. Like, if I'm you know doing a one arm zercher and like reading a book or something, like it's probably that you can probably read between the lines that that's not my you know standard bodybuilding training for the most part.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm probably the least fun odd lifts guy there is because I'm under so much time pressure. I'm just trying to get this stuff done, you know, between taking care of my kids and you know, doing content creation, coaching, various projects. I'm like this is it's kind of my only it's kind of the only thing I do apart from you know, taking care of the kids and work stuff for the most part. So I'm
mm,
I end up having kind of I think I have probably the least fun approach to odd lifts of anyone. I'm very serious about it now. Like, you know, I try to have fun with it, but like a lift has earned its keep for me. So if you see me doing an odd lift, it's probably earning its keep at this point. Doesn't mean I've played around with a ton of them that I don't throw into my program too much anymore because they're just not serving a purpose. Not
mm,
necessarily because they're bad. So just they don't work with my training. But yeah, I'm pretty much going to only use an odd lift if it works better than a conventional lift for what I'm trying to do. If conventional lift works better, I'll definitely throw that in. So
mm,
let me give you an example. That was too general. Like deadlift. Deadlift's the conventional variation. I almost never do conventional deadlift, and that is because I think in most cases unconventional lifts are better. Either like the one hand deadlift that gives you more stimulus on most of the upper back than the conventional because it's a heavy overload. The Zercher deadlift just gives you better range of motion for the muscles involved. Or another conventional option, the Romanian deadlift. That I mean, you won't find anyone serious on social media fitness who doesn't love the Romanian deadlift for a good reason.
mm,
It's going to give you more bang for your buck development than the
yeah,
conventional. So you know, it doesn't matter whether it's conventional or unconventional. I'm going to use what is working best for me. So
yeah,
between the conventional option of Romanians and the other options that I've mentioned, you know, it just doesn't make sense for me to invest my time in that particular lift. Bench press, you know, I don't do just because it like the setup time or like the difficulty of setting it up with my setup just doesn't the juice
yeah,
isn't worth the squeeze. It's not a bad lift,
mm,
but it just doesn't make sense for my training. The conventional lift that I have actually stuck with the most is the back squat because it's just so hard to. It's such a good exercise. Um, even if I have to clean the bar up my back to get in position, it's still worth doing. So I actually still that's the one I actually keep doing.
mm,
And that I to be honest, I still prefer it. Not that I don't like Zercher squats, I do like Zercher squats, but overall, I'm still going to call the back squat a better leg developer. So
mm,
like I really only Now you're gonna see an unconventional lift for me to get the bar up to my back, but I'm still trying to do back squats.
Mm. Yeah.
That kind of clarifies my approach to it.
Yeah, and I think I get it already, but I kind of just wanted you to talk a bit about it because I think when you do unconventional stuff and searcher stuff, to some people it's gonna seem like, why is he doing that? He's just doing it for the sake of it or something. And I'm kind of like you, that I'm very curious, experimental, and I just like trying things. And like you say, many of the things it was like, okay, well, that was just kind of stupid. I'm not gonna do that again, but every once in a while you find something. And so I've got then from following you, I know that because it's fun. That's also what I wanted to come to, that I like that aspect though, to just do something because it's fun also. Of course, you're talking about working under time pressure, so maybe you have less time to just play around and stick to what actually produces results for you. But I've done searcher squats, but for me, I've never programmed it. It's been every once in a while when I just feel I need something that's a bit fun today. That it turns me on in a sense, like not sexually, but that just to have a lot of weight in your elbow crooks and perform a big movement. There's just something about it. But so in that case, people will ask me like, why do you do that? And the reason literally is just to do that. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to kind of hear you talk about that it's mostly actually because I found that these options are better, but there's a little bit of that play too. Yeah, the searcher squat, I'll say for me, it's almost like a deadlift, like it's a bit like a squat on the descent, but then when I get up, it's pretty much just a hip hinge mostly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that you can do it two different ways. I mean, you can do it as kind of a hybrid, kind of squat hinge movement, the way you're talking about. It almost feels like a hack deadlift, like a behind the back deadlift in terms of
Mm,
the movement dynamic to me. And I feel like I like that. I actually have programmed it and I've gotten good results from it. I would say it's probably not going to be as good of a stimulus for the quads overall as the back
mm,
squat, just because you do it that way and it's going to tend to your quads are actually going to be working harder at the top of the movement, right? Because you do have to
mm,
like kind of bring them under, and you're going to actually be they're going to be a little bit more challenged at the top, but it's a little bit less challenged at the bottom. So it's probably not as good overall for quads, but it's also just like a nice hybrid. I feel like it's kind of like a almost like a specialty bar squat. It changes up the movement a little bit. If you're kind of stale on one movement pattern, you can change it up some, and it's good. Yeah, it's good to have variety, even if that doesn't mean that's what you're going to do for your whole training career. I think it's beneficial to have some variety. Maybe you spend a year on if you're training for 20 years and you spend a year or two on searcher squats, it's probably going to pay off more than just I back squat is the best exercise. I will do back squat for 20 years.
mm, mm,
um, but then you can also do them in a very upright fashion that is more quad dominant. Kind of replicates a front squat more. But
mm.
then you could also do front squats. You could do goblet squats. You could do high bar back squats. So it's just good to have options.
Yeah, and you mentioned the one arm deadlift. How much have you done on that one?
The best one I'll count is 500. I tried 515. It was questionable.
Is that
So
is
I
that you do that with a hook grip, or how do you do that?
yeah. I mean, the ones I count are with a hook grip. I mean, I actually have a pretty bad grip. I don't have a strong grip at all. I'm trying to work on it, but
I was going to
hook
ask
grip
you
is a
for
different challenge.
tips.
Yeah, yeah. Hook grip is a different challenge. It's. I mean, I think they're non-transferable. You're not necessarily going to have the same degree of tendon strength in your thumbs if you just work on like crushing grip
Mm,
as you would develop from really developing your hook grip. But then developing your hook grip doesn't mean you can close a gripper. So I've
mm,
developed the hook grip a lot, but yeah, that doesn't mean I'm good at any other grip challenge. But yeah, I mean, I've done 500 for three with a strap, but I don't really count that as much.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's an underrated exercise, I think, for a lot of reasons. It's like I said, it overloads the upper back.
Yeah.
The conventional deadlift and especially sumo have come under fire because they just take so much out of you for relatively little, actual muscular gains in return. That they're not necessarily the best back exercises out there, especially for how much effort a lot of people expend on them. you bring in something like the one hand deadlift where you're using actually less weight overall, although not that much less,
Hmm.
but you're exposing a lot of your upper back to a much heavier overload. It's
Hmm.
a little bit more bang for your buck, and you do, I think, start to get more out of it than with conventional. It's one way of increasing the stimulus, and it can also be it also lets you stay more upright, so it can actually be fairly low back friendly, lower overall load,
Hmm.
and more upright stance. Um, and then just having a little bit of a unilateral stimulus can really help with the QLs and the low back, which we always train them, front to back, but we very rarely train them
Yeah.
side to side. So I think it is pretty beneficial for back health. I mean, you could go more extreme and do side bends or suitcase deadlifts, and that's beneficial too. But the one
Yeah.
hand deadlift gives you an element of that. So it's actually underrated for that reason. I
Hmm.
haven't used the hack deadlift and Jefferson's as much just because I do feel like the same limitations. They're fun, but I feel like the same limitations as the conventional deadlift kind of apply, where they're not necessarily going to give you that much for all the effort
Hmm.
you expend on them.
I was hoping that you had like insane grip strength for those one hand deadlift,
No,
and you were to teach me how to
mm-mm.
do them.
No, I have to. I have in it like I have very long, skinny fingers, so they're like they
Mm.
work well as ropes to like just tie around something because you're essentially just tying it. You're almost like it's like you're tying a rope around the bar, but
Mm.
ropes aren't so good for for all the other aspects. I got a set of grippers from the Golden Grip Shop. They're
Yeah.
very good grippers, and I've been training with them. So hopefully, we'll do. My grip will improve from that. It's already improving some, and then they sent me a bunch of other implements that I have to find a way to incorporate into my program. Time is just such a crunch for me. I feel bad that I haven't been able to do as much of that as I should. But I've got and my training mobility, bodybuilding, grip is a lot to it. But yeah, my grip is not. Yeah, I'm not the guy to go to for that.
Mine is disproportionately weak too. I think like a pronated grip deadlift, I've done like 170 kilos. What is that in pounds? Like 365, 380, something like that. I don't know. But I've done like 225 kilos. So that's like 500 pounds for one rep max.
Mm.
Otherwise, I gotta say to the audience that I haven't trained the conventional deadlift. That's like doing it 3 sessions randomly. So it would be a lot bigger if I trained for it, just so everyone understands
Mm.
that. But I found that Golden Grip Shop actually through you. Somehow I saw them through you. So I didn't get the grippers yet, but I got this pronator thing, for
Yeah,
rotations,
yeah.
and because I have some other grippers already, but I got this like grip hub, and you can attach it to this
Mm.
thing. I really like that. It actually surprisingly satisfying thing to just like grip it with just your fingertips,
Yeah.
like this. But how have you been training with the gripper so far?
I mean, what I mostly do is I'll warm up with they gave me a whole set, which is so helpful because I used to have the Captains and Crush grippers back in the day before they got stolen. As soon as I moved to LA, some tweaker broke into my car and stole my gym bag with Captains of Crush grippers and my Olympic lifting shoes, which yeah,
That's
like
sad.
what are you gonna do? Like, hey, cuz, you want some lifting shoes? Put 100 kilos on your clean and jerk, huh? But no, it's like, why did you steal my Olympic lifting? You can't sell. Whatever. It's frustrating, but I never got another pair. But anyway, yeah, yeah. Just it's just like lifting. If you get into it with too heavy of a gripper, you're gonna end up with tendonitis. But having their lightest one to just warm up with really high reps, and then just get into kind of pyramid up. I just kind of pyramid up each time. That's working fairly well.
Hmm.
I'm able to actually train without getting tendonitis, and also using their expanders, which are really good because
Oh yeah,
they
I
gave
got
me
those
three.
too.
Yeah, they gave me three of them, so they actually go up in weight because a lot of the ones you order on Amazon are just like it's like
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah, I
and
know.
they don't really do the job. But yeah, their grip expanders. I'll just kind of superset the grippers and the grip expanders, and that's been
Mm.
working pretty well. I just throw that in at the front of any of my pushing workouts or arm workouts because it helps to warm my elbows up a little bit. The expanders especially really help because like, with any tricep exercises, elbows are kind of the limiting factor, and that actually does help warm up my elbows. So I've been throwing that in as part of my warm ups. But as far as doing dedicated grip work, I got their pinch gripper, the pronator. I've been using the pronator some, I because
Mhm.
I that is really important for elbow health. So I've been
Yeah.
incorporating that one too. Um, but as far as like really dedicating myself to pinch grip and all, I have been slacking.
Hmm. Yeah, it's because me, I have always been somewhat rigid with my progression schemes in the gym, but it has worked so well for me, And when I come upon something, when I feel like I don't know that I can have, three sets of 8 to 12 on this kind of thing, I get a little like, what do I even do? So it's like
Yeah.
interesting to hear what someone else does.
Yeah, I'll start with 50 reps on the light gripper just because I need that to warm up. Because believe it or not, like my finger tendons are actually fairly weak, and all. If I just like start with the heavier gripper, it'll end up causing me like tendonitis. Which, yeah, it's kind of probably disappointing that this guy who's out here deadlifting 500 with one hand is has weak fingers. But again, like they're really good as ropes. They're not really good as crushing. Like you mentioned conventional deadlift. My PR, just double overhand conventional
Mm-hmm.
deadlift is 405, and
Mm-hmm.
that barely got like soft lockout, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
and then I with one hand and hook grip, I can lift 100 pounds over
Yeah.
that. It's funny how that works, but the hook grip is extremely powerful.
Mm. Yeah, it's making your
But
hand
like I
into
guess
a.
the tendons are strong, the muscles are not. But
Mm.
we're working on that. We're working on it.
Mm. Yes, cool. So I want to move on to some other things, just because you mentioned, or you touched on many things when you told the backstory. So one thing you mentioned that you don't want to take performance enhancing drugs and that kind of thing, and you mentioned things about TRT. So I have more things to ask about that. What's kind of your take on steroids?
Oh, I'm not necessarily 100% opposed to steroids. It's part of professional athletics at this point. If you're trying to be world class as a football player, I don't know. Well, maybe not your football. You probably wouldn't want to take steroids for your football, but our
Yeah.
football, you probably do want to take steroids for, or obviously powerlifting, bodybuilding, strongman. I mean, you're not going to be out there deadlifting 500 kilograms without steroids, right? So
Mm.
it is what it is. It's not the healthiest thing, but the cat's out of the bag there. It's just a part of sports, and it's yeah. I'm not gonna. I'm definitely not going to tell a young man who has shown a whole lot of promise in one of these sports that can actually make life changing money.
Mm.
Um, hey, don't do it. Stay natty. It's like if you have if you're a promising college football player and you're kind of you're looking at getting recruited to the NFL, but you maybe need that extra edge. I'm not going to tell you, hey, don't no, dude, stay natty. Like you could make millions of dollars and make generational wealth for your family. Well, in most cases they don't because they spend it foolishly. But if you
Mm.
actually invest it and spend it well, you can really change the outcome for your whole family, for yourself. So in that case, I'm not gonna tell a young man, hey, don't do it. But as far as recreational lifters, I kind of hate to see that, especially if you're not really even putting in the work to maximize the potential you could have. I really hate seeing people who, frankly, are lazy in the gym and not necessarily just physically lazy, like they don't push themselves, but intellectually lazy. They don't really want if things aren't
Mm.
working, they don't want to just try different things until they find something that works. They just want the easy answers and
Yeah.
oh well, I trained 5 years and I did the basics that I was told to do, and this is how far I got. That was my natural limit. Now I'm going to go on steroids and tell everybody else what I know. Like I hate that. And I think people who are on steroids who actually care about lifting and love the iron game and want, um, good lifting culture should hate that too, because at the end of the day, the best enhanced lifters still rely very heavily on good training. So if there are a ton of experts out there using drugs as a shortcut to become an expert and not not really learning good information. You know, enhanced lifters, even people who want to be, great enhanced lifters also suffer from the excessive use of steroids as a crutch, and certainly from people who, would not otherwise be able to attain any status in the fitness industry, just,
Mm,
looking the part because they took a shortcut. And yes, I mean, come on, like, the drugs work. You're not going to become Arnold Schwarzenegger without knowing how to train, but you can definitely become bigger than the average person with
mm,
that, with very, very poor training.
mm,
I mean, I think you could say a lot of them, it really prolongs that noob gains stage,
mm,
right? You don't, that doesn't mean you can just sit on a couch and build a great, and, get huge, but you don't have to be that smart about what you're doing to get fairly large. I mean,
mm.
so I hate them for that reason. Well, no, I don't. Again, I don't hate the drugs, and I don't hate drug users because there are a lot of enhanced athletes that I have tremendous respect for. But
Mm.
they're the ones who are not using drugs as a crutch, but they're using drugs to
Elevate.
genuinely just do superhuman stuff that humans could not do, no matter how motivated or dedicated they were. And that's cool. So if you're using it to accomplish something that's ultimately worthy, sure. But
Mm.
there are a bunch of people in that kind of, they really aren't justifying the drug use, that really ought to just stay quiet. And if you just want to take a shortcut so you look good at the club and get girls, okay, but don't come on social media acting like you're an expert. Okay, your muscle, whatever. You took the shortcut, that's fine. You bought some muscle. Don't go telling everyone you know what you're doing. As far as
Mm.
TRT, I think it's kind of insidious. I think it's kind of an insidious danger for men because, like, it's so promoted now. Like, it's healthy. It's
But
gonna
it's
make your
therapy,
business
Atlas.
better.
This is
Yeah,
therapy.
sorry, man. I should. Yeah, it's insidious. It's promoted as being a health thing. It's medicine, and sure, you lose your testicles in the war, you're gonna need TRT. But come on, the guy who just maybe hasn't been as good about his diet as he should have, maybe hasn't trained as consistently as he should have, doesn't ever see sunlight.
Hmm.
You know, maybe he doesn't need to just go get tested and immediately jump on.
Hmm.
But you have all these people, even like elite biohackers like Andrew Huberman. Not that I agree that everything he does is smart. I don't. But
Mm.
he's supposed to be like, this like pinnacle of biohacking. He's incredibly rich. He could do whatever he wants, set up a schedule however he wants, sleep 10 hours a day if he wanted, eat any kind of quality of food he wanted, exercise however much he wants, whenever he wants. He's loaded. People pay him just to, have a good jawline and tell them things while looking jacked. And he's on TRT like, oh, this is what I do to optimize my health. Like, and what images, and then on the other end you have, young Mr. Eubank saying he needs
Mm.
TRT. So between that,
Yeah.
that just sends the message that basically everyone who wants to be successful and no matter, just needs it. It's just such an insidious message because, I mean, I think you get into cultural issues, and yeah, there are a lot of things in modern life that are, I think, that genuinely are harder for young men. It's harder to get that good job that will, give you the life that maybe our aunts, that our dads and granddads took, depending on how old your granddad is, took for granted. It's harder to maybe to find a good woman who's ready to get married at the time when you are looking for that. But the one thing we still have is our physical fitness. We can still make all the same. I mean, that's still, the ball's still pretty much in our court there. We have control over that, and that's the
Mm.
one thing where all the excuses are made. All the same tough guy masculinity gurus who want everyone else to pull themselves up on their bootstraps economically, go sell their pyramid scheme or whatever. So just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, make money, you know, go find a woman, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that. Oh yeah, but with physical, oh yeah, you still need to go on TRT, obviously to be able to do all that, right? And so
Yeah.
it's backwards, and that saddens me. So I think there should be more pushback. Again,
Mm.
some people genuinely need it because there are injuries and medical conditions, but
Sure.
not, there's some gray area between that and Alex Eubank. So you know what I
Hmm.
mean? I've rambled on too long.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think you were going to excuse yourself for talking for too long or something, but I'm here to listen to you mainly. It's actually quite a nice break for me. I talk so much in my life and on my YouTube channel, so it's kind of nice for me to get to take the back seat in this setting. But yeah, to me, it's this kind of thing, even calling something TRT, no, this is not steroids. It's actually therapy. It's testosterone replacement
Mhm.
therapy. It's like, because I think some people, I don't want to say they're more simple-minded, but some people are going to probably even see it as something else than steroids. But when
Mhm.
it's actually the exact same thing, it's just that in this case, it's a doctor that gives it to you, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. There's even kind of an insidious danger with that. You've read Nietzsche, right? Or have you?
I haven't read Nietzsche, but I know him, of course.
No.
I don't read much, man.
Okay. Well, no, I got the impression that you do. You give the impression that you read a lot. So,
Oh, well,
um,
I'll take that
I
as
guess
something
that's
at least.
yeah. Hey, if even if you haven't read a lot, it's better to appear that you have. So that's a good thing. I mean, some people, I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to be telling me I'm like misappropriating or butchering the concepts here. But the thing about Nietzsche is like most academics don't even agree on what he was saying because he deliberately wrote to be misread. So you can kind of interpret him the way however you want. It's actually a hobby of mine to like just make up quotes by Nietzsche and attribute them to him, just because I feel like it sounds like something he would say, and I try to like I've done that in a couple of posts now. I'll try to slip in a quote by Nietzsche that isn't actually from him. Like there's one by uh there's this one by Emerson that really sounds like some shit that Nietzsche would say, and I know it's by Emerson, but I always attribute it to Nietzsche just because it's funny to me. Because but he said he wrote to be misunderstood, so it's like it's kind of funny to me. Probably no one else thinks that's funny.
Said
Maybe I shouldn't
what?
do that. Anyway, sorry, man. Where I was going to go with that, um, like it seems like using just using the excuse of saying, "Oh, I need this. It's medicine." It's very slave morality.
Yeah,
It's very good versus evil. Like it's the oppressors are bad. I have excuses. I'm more moral even though I'm weak. Oh
mm,
well, I need it. It's medicine for me. Whereas master morality would just be like, no, I'm taking. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm taking steroids because it's awesome. I want to do drugs. Drugs are cool.
exactly.
If you don't, So I think it's very dangerous to men because it's making them admit weakness or say about themselves that hey, I'm inadequate. I can't handle this on my own. I can't do this on my own. I need something external.
Hmm.
And so that's you're taking so I think it's a very dangerous dependency because it gives you all this masculinity, all these good things, but with chains attached, you're dependent on this for all these good things you
Mm,
have. You can't you can't be this businessman you want to be. You can't be this. And so many of these guys are tying everything to like I'm a father, I'm fit, I'm a businessman. I wake up at 4 a.m. to make money, all this stuff.
mm,
And it's all supported on testosterone replacement therapy. So that's
mm,
like you're building up a lot of ego and self-esteem, but it's not all yours. It's tied to something. There's a master there, and I'm
mm,
not saying that TRT companies are out telling folks what to do or anything, but it's still bad to have that to invite that dependency into your life.
mm,
Whereas on some level psychologically, if you just said, hey man, I want bigger biceps. I think I'd like to do some steroids. That
mm,
doesn't, I mean, I'm still not saying you should do that, but I feel like
mm.
that's less damaging psychologically.
Completely. That's a great point you're making, actually, and that's how I feel about it. Because I want to mainly. I'll say the same thing as you. That of course, if someone has the chance to become an elite athlete or something, that's a different story. But then I'll tell people. I'll advise. I'll tell you all the reasons why I think you shouldn't, and that's what I stand for. And I'm a distinct person. I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. I'm going to present like my ideology or what do you want to call it, but. I respect if someone else is just like, well, yeah, you're making good points, but personally, I just like to be even more jacked and I like to go on steroids.
Hmm.
I can respect that, even if I'd still not do the same, you know. So completely, like, just own it if you're gonna do it. Don't call it medicine or something. Yeah. But so the little segue here to something related. How about if you have really bad genetics for building muscle? How about then? Is it different then?
I That's kind of one of my pet peeves is people talking about their genetics. For me to accept that as an excuse, you need to come to me with the results of a DNA test in hand. I don't think now my understanding is they can't fully that's not something that actually you could fully do. There's probably a couple there's probably some indicators that they could get. I don't think the technology is at the point where they can just fully, test your muscle building potential, right? But you can see at
Mm,
least some indicators. But I at least want to see evidence that somebody's done their due diligence and
mm,
at least tried to see what their genetics are. Because we're not like in lifting, we treat it as just like if you read a fantasy story that's badly done, you can just like put magic in it wherever you want to just do whatever. The author can just use like magic to explain whatever they want. If it
mm,
doesn't, it's just something that you can just do whatever you want with. And that's how genetics are used in fitness. Like people just create their own story, like whatever narrative they want. Oh, I beat my genetics. I had bad genetics, but I was successful anyway. Oh, well,
mm,
I have amazing genetics. That's why I look a way that you never can. And we're talking this is a real thing that's in every cell in our body. It's not just make believe, it's a real thing, and you're not doing a single thing to actually check on whether that's actually the case. Like, how do
mm,
you know that it's not your training? How do you know it's not your environment? How do you know it's not any number of other things that could cause this outcome? You don't. Even with steroids, at least people who take steroids know, hey, I saw myself injected. I know I took steroids. People with
mm,
good or bad genetics, they're guessing. It's an educated guess, or
mm,
maybe not educated in most cases. So I think people should talk a whole lot less about genetics, not because it isn't real, but just because you're not actually directly testing that the real thing that you're talking about is actually what you're talking about. Maybe you're just calling the guy who didn't really put in the effort, or maybe wasn't training in a successful way, bad genetics, and the guy who just got lucky and found a successful way of training, good genetics, or maybe a lot of these people with good genetics are on steroids. Maybe they don't have good genetics; they just took steroids.
mm,
So but yeah, I mean, if someone, I mean, I still wouldn't necessarily say you should go on steroids if you have bad genetics for building muscle. I would say you should probably find if you legitimately do have bad genetics for building muscle, which I'm going to
mm,
be very, very, very skeptical on because I think most of us are a lot. I think every human trait. I have a statistics background, so every human trait is going to cluster toward the middle. There's a
mm.
vastly greater likelihood that you're somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
maybe one or the other side, but there's a vastly greater chance you're somewhere in the middle than some kind of outlier. So in all
Mm,
likelihood, you just need to train better. But
yeah.
but yeah, even if you do legitimately have bad genetics, maybe you should focus on something that you're better at because there's probably something that you're good at that's going to be more rewarding. Get in the best shape you can, but go do something you're good at. Don't
Mm,
take steroids to be mediocre at something that you're not destined for success at. That's not
mm,
you're going to compromise your health just to be mediocre. No, it's like people can earn respect in any number of ways. Go find something you're good at and do that.
mm. I love that take because I completely agree. And yeah, I talked about that with Jeffrey. That imagine some of us get accused of being like a fake natural, that you're secretly taking steroids. Imagine being the other person that's like so mid, but they're taking steroids, but never ever anyone would think that. That are you even happy with that at that point? But no, I completely agree. It's just an easy out. Like it must be my genetics.
Hmm.
I know because I've trained for 2 years now and nothing is happening. It's like, well, what are you
Hmm.
doing then? Like what have you tried? Is what I want to know. And because I also get some comments that oh you must have really good genetics for this and that. And like when I just compare to people when I think of people with good genetics, like for instance, just as I think for me, it took 1 year of really serious training to get like 2 plates on a bench. I know one guy personally. that never trained. And he's a little on the bigger side, like a little fat, basically. But he never trained anything, really. He could do like 2 plates for reps the first time he tried. To me, like clearly in this regard, he must have like better genetics for this than me. Then I don't know how true this is, but I just remembered I heard Jay Cutler tell a story that when he was like a teenager or something, that the kids wanted to be like, hey, Jay, can you just go bench 315? And apparently he could like do that without having trained for it. So, if do I have good genetics like compared to these guys? Clearly there's like something big beyond this. So yeah, I'm sure there are some people are really unlucky. You talk about this, how it's spread out in the population, but those are going to be very, very few. Most people, in my opinion, doing the right things for long enough, you're going to get a really impressive, in most people's eyes, results. I'm very sure of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's what I think, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are some outliers out there, but I mean, the more you're going to deviate from the norm, the harder that gets. I mean, almost every human trait is, is on that normal distribution. And, if you look at it almost like a factory, like there has to be a degree of standardization or all the parts are not going to fit together and whatever item you're making, probably isn't going to work that well. So any kind of mutation that's outside of, some tolerances is going to be very unlikely to be successful because it's probably just going to throw off the whole, which kind of I guess explains why I think in some cases genetic variation is generally lower than a lot of people like to claim on social media. And then on the flip side of it, I think it always gets presented as like good or bad, whereas in most cases it's more
Mm,
like good for one thing, bad for another.
yeah.
You look at I saw a video of this guy deadlifting like something insane, like 6 or maybe even more times body weight. The guy's got like the weirdest physique you can imagine. I'm not trying to bash the guy. I'm just telling you, he's got, you know, neck's incredibly short, arms are just incredibly long, legs, torso, everything incredibly short. And that, allows him to deadlift an insane multiple of his body weight. But then, if you look at a lot of other athletic pursuits, I mean, you can tell his frame would be very awkward. I mean, even powerlifting, I'm sure his bench is not especially good. In fact, I would imagine it's fairly.
Yeah.
It would just be hard to bench this guy, right? But so does he have bad? If in a lot of, I think in a lot of times and places, people would say, "Oh, this guy has bad genetics," because for a lot of things it'd probably be true, but then he happens to be at a time when powerlifting is popular and you can get a lot of renown for a big being able to pick up a big multiple of your body weight off the ground, and he just so happens to excel at that. So does he have good genetics for that? I guess because he got big on
Mm,
social media in that sense. Does he have bad genetics for everything else? Probably. Does
mm,
maybe he just has genetics, and obviously there are issues that are obviously just like not good for anyone and just bad. But I
mm,
think for a lot of us, like this, I mean, you have a lot of genetic drift, or not. That's the difference. But sorry, you have a lot of genetic diversity. Like certain East African populations are incredible endurance runners, and they would probably do terribly at bodybuilding, powerlifting, American football, and you see like Polynesians, and they're just I don't know if you've ever run into any, but like a lot of these guys are built, their wrists are like 10 inches, just, they're clearly built different. And clearly their talents are going to be, more towards strength. They're going to be naturally strong. And you have that, diversity among populations as well. But it's just, that is one good or bad? No, they excel at different things.
completely. And I guess I'm all about just removing people's excuses, because that's what I feel like these things are. It's so funny how quick people are to jump to things like, oh, he must be on gear or genetics. I have a couple of personal examples that my neck, for instance, I know you train neck also, but I've done that now for, what is it, like a little less than 1.5 years. But So when I had been doing it for like 1 year, then I got this comment from a guy like, "Your neck is huge, bro. I'm not saying that you're on gear, but blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Well, I trained it twice per week for a year now with progressive overload. Like maybe that's the reason it looks huge." The same thing with like calves. For what I've heard, I've just randomly overheard this conversation between guys many times in the gyms. Like, yeah, I just feel like calves. It's like they don't grow no matter what you do. And I'm like, always think to myself, like, you never trained calves seriously ever. It's like you do it every once in a while at the end of a leg workout or something. Just try again, train them seriously as you would do anything else with progressive overload. I'll grant people that maybe calves, some people just have huge calves, but you can grow them definitely. So yeah, no, I just think it's what I give people. One thing is more the shape of your muscles that you cannot do so much about, you
Mhm.
know. But often we tend to see in others what we'd like for ourselves and miss. Like for instance, when I was younger, like, I was actually quite fit as a like teenager, but I couldn't see it back then because I had some kind of body dysmorphia, I guess. Look, when I'm looking at stuff even before social media, like to me, what I wanted is that really shredded look, and maybe I have kind of a 4 pack. That's kind of my genetics for it. But so in my view, I didn't have like abs because it's supposed to be that 8 pack. Now, of
Mhm.
course, I know it's kind of okay. I don't have the 8 pack genetics, but what I do have going for me is that those really thick, kind of like Arnold, the upper abs. So we
Mhm.
have different strengths and weaknesses, but that's one thing. You can't really control the shape of your muscles like that, or your body fat distribution in the case of the abs also.
Yeah, that's a good point because I mean I look at your pictures, I think your abs look great, but I mean if
Thanks,
you're
man.
if you're counting, I guess if we're counting them up, because I'm when I look at your pictures, I'm not counting, I'm not going one, two, three, four, five, six,
Mm,
I'm like, okay, this guy's aesthetic, he's got this, blonde, Viking, just, like good look, like, but yeah, I think you look great. I'm not counting your abs, right? And then same thing with me. I have, well, I kind of tend to have what looks like a 4 pack because my upper abs, for whatever reason, are tiny. Like they're
mm,
except in certain cases, they tend to just like hide under my pecs, except in certain lighting. And then my lower abs are actually split all weird to where honestly, if I cut down to like bodybuilding show level, it would look cool because I would have a 9 pack, but it kind of obscures but it obscures the definition and makes it harder for me to have an 8 pack. So it looks like I have a weird 7 pack. Like because there's an extra split that there shouldn't be, which is but it kind of again it's kind of if I really did focus on cutting down, it would be maybe a good thing, but at higher body fat it isn't as good a thing. So, but again, this is something that you look at in the mirror and see, and like nobody else is thinking about.
mm,
So yeah, that was a really good point that you brought up there. I think we're both analyzing ourselves in ways that other people probably wouldn't.
mm.
Yeah,
It's always like that. It's always like that. No, I think I think your strong point would be your backside mostly, right?
yeah, that's why I focus on that.
Uh,
And also because I mean, my front hasn't changed in years because I'm not really prioritizing pecs or anything, and your abs are going to look the same at the same body
mm,
fat percentage, that regardless.
mm. I
But there's a
saw
lot more potential for development.
right before this when I was just scrolling through your Instagram a bit. It was this clip with like, "What is bro training for?" with like power shrugs and stuff, and then the answer was aesthetics, and it was this kind of epic. You're standing somewhere. I think of Nevada, but where are you? Los Angeles?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, California. So that's actually in the mountains above Los Angeles. Like
Hmm.
the highest, or at least I'm pretty sure it's the highest peak in the St. Gabriel's. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I could be wrong about that, but it's at least it gets up high enough to where you get kind of that California what am I trying to say, conifer forest biome, because most of LA is kind of a desert. It's not a
Hmm.
full on desert, but it's kind of like scrub. You have a bunch of like scrubland vegetation, but then you get up high in the mountains enough, even Southern California, it's dominated by big conifers and whatnot. So that's really cool. Yeah. And yes, that's yeah. And I was just yeah, I was just kind of spontaneous in like kind of misty lighting, and it just worked out really well. So
Mm.
It's like, damn, okay, that worked really well.
It was a good
Um,
picture, and it actually made me think of this that aesthetics. To me, it's not just about the physique, like there was actually something I remembered out thinking of the odd lifts and stuff. Even to me, aesthetics is like a bit of a package, like of course it would the end product, the physique would be maybe the main thing, but even like just take, the environment you're in a nice milieu there, posing, but also the way you look when you lift. And actually, this guy, Clarence Kennedy.
mhm.
Yeah, when I heard him talk about it, I know because he's pretty much like a world-class Olympic weightlifter for fun, But
Yeah.
he talks about like the way he squats and stuff, that he wants it to look a certain way. Like maybe there are things he could do, maybe it would even make him a bit stronger, but he's all about the aesthetics in his lift too. And I think that's kind of cool. Now, of course, I don't do Olympic lifts, but for me, for instance, now, like doing squats, I could move so much more weight and even probably grow more muscle actually not doing ass to grass squats. I did much more weight before, but now I just really like the way it looks when I go really deep and pause and just explode up.
Mhm.
So to me, that's part of aesthetics.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the really cool things about social media. It gives us I mean, I think getting a lot of fitness culture got siloed into these competitions, and now what started as an aesthetics competition, bodybuilding, is just it's really just gotten zeroed in on winning at any cost. And you have people that in a lot of cases look over dieted,
Yeah,
stringy. They're covered in these. It looks like furniture varnish. They're covered in this brown spray tan, just
yeah.
posing on a stage. That just doesn't look aesthetic to me. I don't feel like that looks good. I don't. It's not pretty.
I
It's
agree.
not pretty. I don't want to be. You get what I'm saying? I don't mean pretty, but it's not pleasing. It's not something that I look at and go, oh wow, that's very beautiful. It's like no,
Mm,
it's not. That's not appealing. Neither is a lot of the competition lifting, I think.
mm,
But yeah, there's definitely an aesthetic to good training, and I like to I mean a lot of the aesthetic is in some cases more raw because I'm certainly not doing like good form Olympic lifts
mm,
like he does. I mean, obviously that a lot of my
mm.
technique is uglier, but there's a certain aesthetic to you know the brutality of a Zercher or
Yeah.
the I find there's definitely an aesthetic to something like a bent press or a Turkish get up, just kind of the
Mm,
body positions and skill involved. And I agree with that. I know when I did judo back in the day, there was a poster on the wall that where they had they were just doing these throws in like a natural setting. That's doing a sayonagi or whatever on the onto a carpet of leaves, and it's just kind of mid throw, and it's really aesthetic. And I always like that, just like the practice of your art kind of made into something aesthetic. So I like that, and
mm.
that's kind of like if you look at the older eras of bodybuilding, we're not actually looking when we look at the physiques of that older era. Well, the pictures we're looking at are very rarely the competition pictures, right? We're looking at the picture where the guy's posing on top of a mountain or in the ocean or on the beach or something.
Yeah.
We're not looking at them under like lights and you know in an audience. So I that's and social media gives us the freedom to kind of get back to that and not necessarily just okay, I'm going to stand on stage next to this other guy who's also covered in furniture
Mhm.
varnish, and
Yeah.
we'll each try to look as shredded as we can.
Yeah.
So
You
yeah,
know,
I definitely agree with that.
I thought about that it would be really cool I just don't know quite how you would, I haven't thought about it so much, but like with a bodybuilding competition where we just like move away from that whole thing, and I guess it's hard if there's going to be like judges, there has to be some kind of objective standard too. But, personally, if I just even think of it like for fun, like even if it's not a competition, like someone that wants to show off something like, physique wise, and it doesn't, maybe for someone, maybe it is even a little softer look somehow, it doesn't always have to be shredded, a more natural
Mhm.
aesthetic like that. And I think you can tell me about this. I think the more old school bodybuilders, it wasn't just about posing on a scene, or they were actually like, right, it was combined with a kind of physique and lifting thing, right?
Yeah, I think I'm not the best at the history, but I think at some point maybe I feel like it was like the 30s and 40s they were adding like an athletic component to it, which was sometimes weightlifting, sometimes like gymnastics or calisthenic feats and stuff to it as well. And I think my understanding is like Bob Hoffman wanted that thrown in because he wanted to tie bodybuilding to weightlifting,
Mm.
and then like Joe Weider wanted to do away with that so the athletes could just focus on pure physique. And I think eventually that won out, and they did away with that. I think maybe in the late 40s, I want to say. But yeah, that was initially the idea. I mean, it kind of works because I like the idea that your physique should be functional, but at the same time, all those guys were anyway because before steroids, it's really hard to build a great physique without just being impressive physically. So
Mm.
I feel like it's a good idea in practice, but I don't know that. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't have enough. I don't know enough about the history to know whether it really worked
Mm.
out that well or not. But I would say, but I do like the idea that you shouldn't just look good in a specific pose. You should look good
Mm.
doing what you do. So, if you want to look, the way you look doing your craft, lifting your weights or doing calisthenics, that should also be aesthetic. So that's a cool thing to, maybe judging people based on how they look while actually performing the craft, bring that back into it. I
Mm.
think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. No, but I guess that's why it doesn't speak to me naturally or not to do that kind of bodybuilding because even if there's some things in my training I would do purely to like grow a muscle, but to me it's been all the time that like I told you, that even when I got into training, it was first and foremost about me feeling better. So that's a high priority. But then I also knew that I do not just want to build muscle at any cost. And like I want it to be an expression of certain abilities, at least. Like for instance, I've had some hip issues, and so my quads mainly have lagged behind a bit. And I know that I could have done like leg presses. And they would have worked because the stabilization would have allowed me to go heavy and grow some quads. But I just don't care to do the leg press. I want to heal my hips and improve my squat. And I'm finally back there making some progress there. But the point is, I think it's a bit unfortunate that bodybuilding is a bit. It's the current form of it that we see is a bit perverted, in my view.
I completely agree. And the leg press is, I mean, yeah, I like what you said there. Yeah, the leg press. That's not the aesthetic of bodybuilding I want to embody either. The
Mm.
just sitting on a machine. I've always thought, like of the golden era guys, Tom Platz is definitely my favorite because I just love
Mm.
the aesthetics of his training. And
Yeah.
if you actually look at his physique, I don't necessarily find his physique actually to be the most aesthetic. I mean, his quads are huge, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily want to look like that, right? But I would love to train like that. I would love to,
Mm.
just do those brutal, crazy squat sessions. Like I would rather squat the way Tom Platz squats than
Mm.
have the legs that look like his. So in kind of a bigger aesthetic sense, I feel like he embodies the aesthetic of bodybuilding, even though I don't actually necessarily find his physique to be
Mm.
the best looking. Like somebody like Frank Zane, obviously is more aesthetic in terms of physique, but that
Mm.
kind of, I hate to say it, I'm not trying to bash, but I do find his training a little bit more boring. And
Mm.
Tom Platz embodies that, the bigger, like the aesthetic of practice, whereas maybe Frank Zane embodies the aesthetic of form. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, the squat versus the leg press. Let's
Mm.
that's it. That's kind of the aesthetics right there.
Mm. Yeah. No, it was my last guest, Henrik. He talked about, I guess it's not all of them, but to me, even the more enhanced and that kind of just posing all oiled up on stage. It seems like it was a different thing back in like the golden era, like when I watch those kinds of guys, I feel like I'm a lot more into someone like Tom Platz than most people I
Mm-hmm.
see today.
Yeah, I liked. Yeah, I think I agree. I think most people do. Honestly, I mean, most people
Mm.
that aren't. It's there's kind of a divide between the competitors who are kind of like bought in okay, this is the standard. We need to adhere to this. And then everyone who just kind of is interested but doesn't compete is like, yeah, that it was better back then. Each guy, they had a unique looking physique. They weren't all looking, they all had different development. They had different colors. They came in, obviously they tanned a lot, but they still ended up coming in, with whatever their skin tone was naturally. So you had, I mean, not that they need to be like, I don't know if that matters. Yeah, well, it kind of, it is, it's different. You don't. It's just a little bit different, even when everyone is just all on stage looking the exact same color. Whether you started out,
Mm.
black, white, Asian, Hispanic, by the time you get up on bodybuilding stage, you're all the same. You're all
Yeah.
the same color of brown. It's nice to just, and the hair is all, they all shave their heads now. Like, it's a nice thing about Seabaum. He didn't do that, but I guess that's classic
Mm.
Mystique. They all, shaven head. It's like they're in a military induction program designed to, decrease all individuality and
Yeah.
promote uniformity. They're all taking the same drugs, doing more or less the same training, same
Mm.
furniture varnish on them, same poses. Yeah, I like the individuality of the Golden Era a lot more.
Mm. 100%. So the last big topic I want to talk about is fasting, because that's something unusual that you and I do, like especially for bodybuilders, because enhanced or not, bodybuilders are often afraid of not eating, that they're going to lose all their muscle and that. So I have some more specific things, but just give me your take on fasting and kind of tell me your experiences, what you've tried with it, and so on.
Yeah, so I got into it back in the day when um from the Lean Gains blog that was Martin Birkin back in,
Mm.
I don't know, 2011 maybe, somewhere around then. So that
Mm.
was, your standard 16-hour fast, 8-hour eating window.
Mm.
And, I tried that. It was very hard at first because I was used to eating breakfast, but then, you get into it. And after about 2 weeks, it was pretty easy. And you know, I liked it a lot because it made dieting a lot easier. That's kind of how it is usually. It's hard at first, then you fall in love with the intermittent fasting, and then eventually you just adapt to that eating window, and suddenly it's not making your diet as much easier because you can just easily eat,
Mm.
your whole all your calories for the day, and that short eating window. But I've still used it ever since then. Just whenever I would diet, it still makes it a little bit easier. And then I tried my first multi-day fast. I think it would have been more like 2013 or something like that. Um, yeah, I tried that. I got through like, I think I did like 48 hours, but then I was really weak in the gym the next day.
Mm.
Um, so that scared me off of it, and I didn't do it for another like decade. Um, then you're afraid of losing muscle, so I was like, oh no,
Mm.
it's really hard to bench press. I must have lost muscle.
Mm.
Wasn't the case at all. Anyway, got back into it more recently. I forget what got me to start back into it. I think I just wanted to experiment,
Mm.
and I
It
found that it
wasn't
works
me then.
fairly well to do. What's that?
And so it wasn't me then. I hope you would say it was me.
Oh no. Oh, well, yeah. I got back into multi-day fasting like what 2022 or something. I want to say.
Mm.
I don't know why I actually don't know why I started back, but I can't tell you what the catalyst was for me
You
thinking
know that snake diet guy?
snake diet. No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he is not as big or trending these days, but he's someone that brought a lot of awareness to fasting. Like his shtick kind of is that he starts his videos by yelling, "Hey, fatty!" And his thing is he's targeting very obese people and trying to help them lose weight. And that's actually the guy that I learned some about fasting from.
Oh yeah, well, I haven't seen him. It's funny. I don't actually consume that much media on it. I
Mm.
forget why I got back into it, but I started experimenting with 2-day fasts, and it actually was working fairly well. I could tell I wasn't losing muscle. My performance in the gym was still suffering afterwards at first, but I was kind of not carrying that much anyway at that time. Just I was more focused on mobility training, so I wasn't that focused on lifting big weights, and I stuck with it. I found it easier to just easier to compress, your calorie deficit into a couple relatively easy days rather than having to consistently eat less for multiple weeks,
Mm,
and
I
worked. So I
agree.
kept doing it and kept doing it, just like more. I've increased to 3-day fasts the next year. That worked even better, and I actually started to find that my performance, even while fasted, actually was starting to catch up to my um, unfasted performance, and I certainly wasn't losing any muscle. I was getting lean fairly easily, so I stuck with it. And this year, I kind of started swinging for the fences and did a 6-day fast and then a 5-day fast, and I mean, both times I hit multiple rep PRs on
Mm,
I'd work out every day, and I had good gym performance even on the last day of the fast. I hit at the end of the 6-day fast. I hit that 500-pound one hand deadlift for 3 reps. I mean, with a strap, but still a nice little rep PR after not eating for 6 days. And yeah, I mean, both in all those cases, you're losing visible amounts of body fat, clearly no muscle.
mm,
But yeah, just it's worked really well. It does get harder, I think, the leaner I get. So it might not necessarily be the best approach to get down to like 5% body fat, I don't think. I think at a certain point, it may be harder for the body to, mobilize that much fat that quickly. So maybe
yeah.
the calorie counting, like really, really precise approach is actually necessary for cutting down that low. It's
Mm,
something I suspect maybe,
mm,
but I'm not trying to get down there anyway. So for my like regular person, I just want to have abs. I'm not trying to have like
mm.
striations in my glutes. It
Yeah.
works really well for me, and I can live a normal, easy life. I can eat desserts with my kids and just chill and just not be focused about like I have to weigh everything, measure everything. You know, if I'm busy, I'm stressed, I just don't eat. Whatever, no problem.
Mm,
It's just sustainable for a regular person that isn't trying to weigh and measure everything. I don't get off track on the holidays. I don't get off track on vacation. Just if I need to, you know, fast for some reason. And I've even started doing it when my kids get sick. Um, and I found it's been successful at preventing me from getting colds, even, which is
mm,
interesting. I feel like it boosts the immune system some. Actually, I'm not going
mm,
to go out and tell everybody, hey, if you go fast multi days, you're going to not get sick. But
mm,
just it has worked surprisingly well for me. Maybe I've gotten lucky a number of times, but it
mm,
seems like it's working. I don't know.
mm.
It certainly is supposed to work for a lot of illnesses. It's not supposed to work for colds, but it has in my case.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, yeah. To my understanding, with fasting and like being sick, it's more bacteria it's supposed to work against more than viruses. But what I heard is that it can strengthen the immune system, but it's supposed not to be more like right now, but more for the future.
Mm,
But I mean, anecdotally, you say that. But one thing I'll say before I talk more about fasting is what I've noticed since I live a much healthier lifestyle overall is that, well, first of all, I don't get sick as often as all at all, but also it's a different thing now. Like there's been many times where I don't even realize that I'm sick until I do. That for instance, just one thing is that I used to always get whatever cold I got. I had intense throat pain. Never get that anymore,
mm,
even when I've been quite sick. And yeah, actually, during the whole lockdowns and all that. There was a time I was in the gym. I was hitting training PRs on a like incline bench. I was just feeling a bit like, like, a little weird. I was sitting in the sauna in the gym afterwards. I was like, maybe I'm sick. And my dad had these like
mm,
tests, and I actually had like, yeah, well, I had the cove. But it was like, oh, I didn't even. I went to the gym. I could still hit training PRs. Because I know when I used to be sick, I would be weak, really weak. So to me, it's just apart from the fasting, maybe the fasting has helped also, but just living a healthier lifestyle for a long time. Just seem to, I get sick less often, and it's
mm.
just not the same thing at all. But one thing I wanted to ask you about fasting is because you talk about doing like rep PRs on the fast and stuff, and my question is just like, what's the purpose of training on the fast to you?
I mean, just because I still live, so I need to I still have my training that I need to accomplish. Mostly, I just don't want to, I still need to train for my goals. And, if I'm taking a week off eating, that doesn't mean I have to take a week off training. And,
Mm-hmm.
also, I think, it's definitely important to signal to the body that the muscle tissue is something that you're using and that it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to be like, okay, just because we have maybe a scarcity of resources, hey, this is still really important. You need to keep it. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's the idea that when you break your fast, there's a bunch of anabolic signaling that can help to rebuild stuff. So I want to
Mm-hmm.
make use of that. This is all bro science. I don't know if this is true or not,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes sense to me to make sure the body knows that it still needs to maintain all this and give it something to do once it has all that growth hormone and all that testosterone after you fast, if that does anything. Additionally, I
Mm-hmm.
just find that my joints are a little bit healthier, so in some cases I feel like I can almost push a little bit harder, especially on like body weight exercises, but to a
Mm-hmm.
certain extent on some lifts actually during the fast, just because my joints are the inflammation is a little bit lower, so I can actually in some cases get a little bit better training, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
um, so that's maybe that's just the placebo effect, but I feel like in some cases I can push a little bit harder. I probably wouldn't want to do like a I know for a fact my bench press would probably still suffer because bench press likes body fat, but I feel like for some
Mm-hmm.
lifts that are kind of more joint, um, that for me my joints might be a little bit more questionable. They tend to be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
healthier. Stuff like
Mm-hmm.
my shoulders and elbows are where I'm struggling the most right now, and with those, I feel like I'm able to push just a little bit harder on my fasted training. Maybe the stuff that's already healthy probably wouldn't do so well. But yeah.
Mm, mm. Okay, interesting. Because we have a slightly different approach to training and the fasting. I get what you're saying about the joints, because for someone that hasn't fasted, like fasting is so anti-inflammatory, and yeah, you feel very like smooth in the body when you get further
Mhm.
into a fast. Have you ever went and done the sauna on a fast?
No, no, we don't. That's not. I don't think I've done a sauna ever.
Oh,
It's not
really?
as normal of a thing here.
No, no, I get that, but that you never did it is surprising to me. But there's a lot of synergistic effects from the fasting and sauna, like autophagy, the growth hormone, but the anti-inflammatory effect. So even if you're just a day fasted and you go do a sauna session, it's you. If you do sauna regularly, you're gonna notice that wow, like my joints feel like butter, basically, you know. But so to me, I of course I don't have kids or anything. I can take more time to prioritize training, and I push it so hard almost all the time, you know. So for me, it's kind of like when I fast, I feel like that's when I don't have to train, and to me, it's kind of like
Mm,
gonna do a very long fast. If I train in the middle of that, like I'm not gonna get any protein to repair the muscle. So I'm thinking maybe that's when I actually lose muscle if I kind of damage it, but I don't get any building blocks for it. This is of course again speculation, bro science, because there isn't all that much studies that's done on fasting. But one thing, my experience with fasting is that I typically have even deeper into a fast, because I've done many 5 day fasts, and the longest one I did was 7.5 days. And I would say that my strength, like absolute strength, is almost the same, but I gas out way sooner in a workout, usually. But there are some exceptions that you actually made me think of when you said the rep PRs, because there was one time, and I'd say this first, that to me, the experience when fasting, this is my analysis of it, is that in one sense, you're in a sort of energy preservation mode, because the body is like, okay, we're not getting any nutrients from the outside, gotta turn down neat. So when you sit down or something, you quite quickly just feel like almost like a stone. You're sitting there. But what I find is that when all your senses are turned up, though, which I see as a sort of hunter state. I haven't got any food. I got to be
yeah.
sharp, alert still, you know. So kind of that when you do something, the body doesn't know what you're doing, of course. So that's kind of where like, okay, now I give you all this strength. Because once I did, it was on the 7 day fast, actually. It was like on the fifth day. I did 130 kilo squats, like 10 reps. That's like 300 pounds. And at the time, that was quite a lot for me. And I remember thinking that, man, I felt like I could have like done almost like twice as many. And I wonder, is like, is it something like my body is like, okay, we're hunting this prey. We gotta push it, that's the bro
Mhm.
science analysis there. But what I typically do is that I do agree with the purpose for training to me on a fast would be this. Again, I've never experienced any muscle loss that I can see, even when I didn't train at all on a fast. But that would be the thing to send that signal that, hey, we're using these muscles. So if you can take energy from anywhere else, don't take it from the muscles. So what I usually do, like on the 7 day fast, I went and did like full body training and do like one set of an exercise, like one set of a press, one set of a pull, one set of a squat or something like that. But no, I would typically try to leave a day of not training and just eating before going into a fast. Yeah, got some feedback. I hear myself right now.
Whoops. Yeah, my headphones died and my speakers just switched on. Let me try to I may just have to mute myself when here, I'll mute myself when you're
Yeah, yeah, you can do that. No, but I try to go into a fast, like not completely recovered, but I guess you'd probably have to take several days off. But my typical thing is leave one day of just eating and not training before starting the fast. And then I like to break the fast and train the next day. So I'm fully refed from that. And that's typically how I program, because I program fasting combined with training for clients. And I can tell you my typical routine I do for that is you start a fast on a Sunday evening, and then you fast Monday, Tuesday. You break it on the Wednesday. For some people, I would have them train on the Wednesday too. But then you pretty much, depending on the person, schedule some training Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But then again, on Sunday, we don't train. We eat to recover well from the training and going into the fast. Because my experience when I got into fasting was that when I trained really hard and got into a fast, that's when the fasts didn't feel so good because it's kind of like my body's almost asking, like, please, can I get something to recover from this? So, yeah, that's kind of how I do it. But yeah, you agree with me, I guess, that muscle loss with fasting is not really a thing.
yeah, I mean it can't really be a thing. So I mean, yeah, I've been practicing fasting as my cutting method for the past 3 years now. And just overall in terms of body weight, I'm up anywhere between probably 13 to 15, 16 pounds from my 2020 baseline at the same body fat percentage, roughly, just based on how my abs look, because they are, I think, always going to look the same regardless. So either I'm making even better progress and then losing muscle every year, or I'm making, or the fasting isn't causing me to lose muscle. So that I think most likely. And even if I'm sure, I mean, you have to break down some tissue during the fast, but I think it probably just gets restored, as soon as you
Yeah.
start eating again, just like your glycogen or anything like that. And yeah, as far as the hunting sense, I agree on that. I notice I can smell rabbit before I see them when I'm out hiking on a multi-day fast. The thing cool that I found out,
Mm.
just since the smell is generally heightened. And yeah, I think there's a little bit of a flow state that you get into. I find sometimes I have difficulty remembering what I'm supposed to be doing next. But once I get into, like you said, once I get into some physical exercise, I can push fairly hard, I think.
Mm.
Um, I haven't really tried to hit big like one max PRs on bigger lifts fasted. I don't know how well I do on that, but I do pretty well on reps. But I think I'm better at reps anyway, just because that's all I usually do. I'm not usually focusing too much on
Mm.
one rep maxes anyway. I know Tom Haviland has said that he does better at one rep maxes, but like you said, he kind of gasses out on reps. But
He
I mean, for me,
fasts.
that's yeah, that's crazy, right? He as big as he is and as lean as he fasts multi days. But I mean, then again, he's if anyone really is built different, he's built different. But yeah, it's in, and I tend to agree with you on the kind of the day after or the day that you break the fast. The day I break the fast, I think my training is going to suffer too, because at that point your body is just in rest and rebuild mode, and I think it's better not to it's better to let it do its thing on that day. Now I I like to have a hard workout before I break the fast because then I'm still energized and still in that
Sure.
hunting mode. Just like we have to do what it takes to survive, and you get a good workout to, and but then like you say, I like to let the body like once I start eating, I like the body just like have its chance to rebuild. Um, so yeah, I agree on that. So you have a lot of clients do your you have a lot of clients do multi-day fasts.
Yeah, like some people, that's why they come to me because it's kind of unusual, right? There's a lot of people that have found fasting and they also were into training and building muscle, and they have somehow noticed, this is possible to combine. But I have had a lot of people that they have worked with some coach, but that's like, no, no, they refuse to let them do fasting. They're completely against it. So yeah, and also one thing I want to ask you about it is because. Yeah, well, because I was associated a bit with a snake diet. Like honestly, I just used the snake diet to kind of like bring attention to, well, it's fasting. I'm talking about their snake diet, big trendy thing. But so a big talking point from that guy is like about food addiction, which I do think is a thing. But what I noticed, for me, I had many bad habits before, but like food and eating wasn't the worst one. But definitely, I ate a lot of junk food, so I would have some cravings for unhealthy processed foods and that. But what I noticed, because I did when I got into fasting, the first fast I ever tried was 5 days. And then I was gonna do it as like a one-off thing, but I found this snake night guy during the fast, and I was just so curious about trying it. So after that, I just tried many different things. I tried like a month of eating just every other day. I tried doing one meal a day in the morning for a month, just eating everything in the morning. And I tried a dry fast, 3 day dry fast. And look, so I tried many different things is the point. And when I didn't fast, when I just did intermittent fasting, what I noticed was like, well, man, it's like I don't crave anything. That's not because I always planned my fast so much. Like I'm gonna start it like this, I'm gonna break it like this with exactly these good whole foods. And what I noticed was that I don't crave like first of all these foods taste way better to me now, and I don't crave these other processed foods, and hunger is not that big of an issue at all. It's like I know I saw you write a post or something about it once that people that are into fasting can more accidentally like just forget to eat or something. That's definitely something that can happen to me now. That sometimes because I am, being a bodybuilder and stuff, you have a sort of an eating schedule that's sort of the same on most days for me at least. But then maybe like, oh, someone wants to see me go do something, so I can't eat, and I get some kind of feeling in my body. I'm like, what is this? What's even going on? And I'm like, I haven't eaten. That's probably what I feel. It's like I've almost dissociated the feeling of being hungry with having to eat. And I've noticed that most people, apart from just being addicted to unhealthy foods, they are way too sensitive to the feeling of being hungry. Because to me, I can actually be hungry and feel like, oh, it would be nice to eat something, but I'm not going to do that right now, and it's not a big deal. Do you have experiences like that also?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I it's something I just incorporate into my life, regardless of goals at the moment. Like I just had a family vacation last week, and I incorporated some form of fasting most days, and I was not at all trying to lose weight. I'm actually in more of a bulking phase right now, but I know for
Yeah,
me, if I have a long drive, um, I'm almost always going to choose to do that fasted just because
convenient.
I hate being sleepy on the road. There's nothing worse than having to power through a long, boring drive. Fighting sleepiness, and if you start eating, I'm not one that can just. I'm going to be happy to eat like a little bit. Oh, okay, I had a little tiny snack. Now I'm good. Now I'm going to want to keep eating. So either okay, now I ate a little bit. Now I'm hungry for more, and I'm not getting to eat, and I have to like use discipline to regulate how little I eat, or I eat something that fills me up and then I get like sleepy and low energy. So I'm always going to choose to um to drive fasted if I can. Um and it's I might get and like you say, I barely notice it, but I might get slightly hungry, but it's like it frees you up to use mindfulness to just like pay attention to not just your feelings of hunger, so they don't just like overwhelm everything. Like this is an emergency.
Mm,
I'm scared what happens if I don't eat, but just, so okay, so what happens if I give in to that? I'll give in, and then I'm paying attention to how I feel afterwards. And okay, it's like, okay, the way I feel 5 minutes after eating everything I want in this circumstance is way worse than just that little bit of hunger that I had previously. And
mm,
you can kind of train yourself with that. It's kind of, I mean, it's reward and stimulus and reward. Once you are free from that food addiction, like you talked about, you train yourself to be attentive to those consequences. And you just know from experience, hey, if I eat right now, given the circumstances I'm in, I'm busy, I have to work, I'm driving, etc.
mm,
Okay, the food will taste good this second, but 5 minutes later, I'm going to feel way like I'm going to be feeling something that is objectively less pleasant than this little tiny bit of hunger that I'm feeling right now. But a lot of
mm,
folks can't. If you're addicted to food, it doesn't come. It's not a possibility for you to say, no, I'm going to ignore my addiction. I'm going to it'll be better. I'll feel better if I ignore this addiction because you feel that urgency, right? So like, yeah, I mean, the day I drove, we went to Sequoia National Park, really cool, giant trees and all. But yeah, I mean, I fasted on the drive over there. I fasted a lot of the days when I was hiking because I don't want to eat, breakfast and then hike uphill or whatever. It's just better to just enjoy life without having to deal with, digesting food. But
mm,
obviously, when you're chilling, relaxing, you want to eat, right? I wasn't restricting myself. I ate, plenty of treats with the kids and all. Uh, Drank plenty of, wine and other things. But
mm,
when I'm out trying to explore or drive or something, I don't want to
mm.
be full and stuff. So it's just
Yes.
something that you naturally incorporate, and a lot of other diet methods, you're probably not going to. You're probably not going to eat a super restrictive diet on vacation or when you're busy or what have you. You're definitely not going to put everything into a macro calculator,
Mm,
but you might just naturally choose fasting if you're experienced with it. And
mm,
that's been my experience with, like, like having kids. You have no time. You know, you may not have time to make good food. You may not have time to make good food choices. You're extremely sleep deprived,
mm,
and that makes a lot of people gain weight because they're, again, addicted to food. So they're just gonna, comfort eat and not make good food and just make bad choices. But if you're adapted to fasting, you realize, hey, I barely got any sleep last night. I'm already tired. If I eat a big meal, I'm going to be even more sleepy, but I still have to take care of this kid and I still have to do all this other stuff. I'm just not
mm,
going to eat. So it even makes like the tiredness of not getting any sleep because you have like a newborn, like it almost, it turns out from something that would, drive 90% of people off the wagon and make them gain weight
mm,
and get out of shape. It's something like, no, I didn't sleep enough last night. If I eat now, I'm going to pass out. I'm just going to not eat, and that it
mm.
becomes like it becomes like a plus instead of a minus. So I think I think it's a good tool for everybody to have in the toolbox, but it's especially essential for at least dads. I don't know about, I mean, supposedly fasting is more like ambiguous for women. There's some benefits, but also maybe some negative repercussions for women. I'm not that's what I've heard based on research. I'm not an expert on that, but I think
Mm,
for men becoming fathers, I think it should be something that you're practice with 100%.
mm. Well, first of all, I don't really buy into the thing that it's not good for women. I could see that, okay, be a bit more careful or something, but uh, like the girl I've been in a relationship with, like during this time I've done well fasting. She did a lot of fasting, like way more than me. She was very into dry fasting actually. She loved it and she felt great from it. So that's of course just one anecdote, but that's one individual that I know like did it a lot and really felt like she benefited from it. And I've done it. I've had way less female clients, but I have done it, and with good results with a few too. But yeah, that's the thing. Fasting to me at this point, because now bulking has become, well, it's also because at this point now I'm bigger, I have a higher metabolism, I have to eat more. But it's a bit tedious to even have to eat because I think both, like you say, the way you even feel when you're fed, but also it's just so convenient to not have to eat all the time. Now, what I feel is like I have a good appetite. It's just that I'd rather not have to eat all the time, you know. But for instance, like when I'm in a cutting or a maintenance phase, recording videos, then of course I can always delay eating till later. I kind of always want to be fasted when I record a video because I feel so focused and on. And I have done the mistake sometimes that, okay, I'm going to eat breakfast and go out. I feel inspired. I know exactly what I'm going to talk about. I eat and I'm like, eh. I kind of, you know, I'm not necessarily tired, but I don't even, what was I even going to talk about? You know, and I kind of forget it, you know. So, yeah, and the funny thing is that most people think of it in the opposite way. I think that, oh, I need to eat, so I have energy, you know, but like what you eat, it's really giving you energy later, mainly. Like, I will understand if you're someone that's like, you know, like elite athlete or someone that exercises a lot, that you have to take some carbs here and there. It's a different thing than like eating this big meal. Here in Sweden, there's a big fika kultur. Fika is like it's a Swedish word. It's hard to pretty much like to take a break and have like coffee and some pastries, you know. And it's Swedes just love their fika breaks. Like at some workplaces, they will have multiple per day. And I feel like they just get stuck in this, like, I don't know, insulin loop where they kind of need to get their hit all the time. But me, yeah, no, I worked some jobs. Like I was serving food like very early when I started training and doing Uncommon Sense and that. Just a temporary job serving food at a buffet. I would do because at that time I was doing it was actually during that phase when I did all these experiments with the fasting. I did a weekly 48-hour fast then, and I always did it when I was working there, you know. So I was running around all day, super sharp, feeling all the smells from the food, but I never felt like I lacked energy. I felt very focused and present doing all this, you know. So yeah, and that's I guess I get the reminder talking to you that I should do some videos about that because that's been a mindset thing too. A lot of people think fasting, refraining from eating, that it's this like tough thing to do, but yeah, me and you clearly have found this like no, they're actually for many times that I actually really prefer to not eat.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. The thing is, it's like an investment. It's hard. It is hard on the front end. Like your first one, at least for me, it's going to be very unpleasant at first, but that kind of like if you're investing, you have to give up some of your money at on the front end, right? You're going to have to pay
Mm.
something big on the front end. And that's what stops a lot of people. They don't want to do that, but then you reap the reward of just it just gets so much easier and more pleasant on the back end. And I think no other method of calorie restriction really does that. For most of them, it's kind of like going to a 9 to 5 job. You want to work, you want the benefit, you want the paycheck, you have to go clock in, work your hours, and every time you want to make a paycheck, you have to go in and work. And it's just kind of always going to be the same. You go into your shift, and there you go. But yeah, with fasting, it's going to be harder on the front end, but then it pays off on the back end where it's almost effortless. And that's, I think, a good analogy is investing. You put up with a big loss up front, and then you almost make money effortlessly down the line. And yeah, man, I completely agree on the productivity aspect. I was trying to write my book last year while bulking, and man, it was a
Mhm.
struggle. Like keeping energized and doing all that. It was hard. And then as soon as I switched to cutting, it's like I was almost done with the book. It kind of exploded to completion once I started cutting because I just wasn't having to eat all the time. And I was I was committed to building muscle because I'm still I'm not satisfied, but also just I want to, now that I'm actually moving into this industry and being professional at this, I want to still be an active practitioner. It'd be a lot easier in some ways to just stay lean all year round. You're always
Mm.
looking good for the gram whenever you want to. Yeah, more focused, more productive, not having to worry about eating. But then, I feel like you're not really testing things out for yourself. You're not really in the, even though obviously you're maintaining, you're not really in the game anymore. You're just, and, you can get hyped up about this new method, but you may think it feels cool, you may think it's cool, but you're not really putting it to the test, and actively trying to build and get better. And that's something that, is important to me. So I'm not ready to just say, okay, let me just maintain yet. But there's definitely a cost to it in terms of being productive and, learning new things. And that it is kind of a struggle. Maybe I should put that on the back burner, but I'm trying to avoid doing that right now. So I'm, I'm trying to bulk now while, building up a lot of projects, and it is more of a struggle,
Mm,
100%. But I think it's, yeah, like to me, I don't want to, because there's so many of these guys on social media that you see, they started their account, they look a certain way, it's good, but they're just kind of like, they're that same person, and they just, tell you their little spin on things. And I don't know,
mm,
like I want to be in the game, so to speak, and
mm,
having just everything that if I get excited about a new thing, I really want to put it to the test, and that's something I feel like I need to run these experiments. Maybe I don't have the same degree of credentials as a lot of people. Not that all those credentials necessarily mean a lot, but one thing that I can guarantee my clients or anybody who buys a program is I'm gonna do my best to try out everything I'm giving to you, field test it. If there are any problems, I want to run into them first, not you.
mm,
And that's I want to run the experiment. So but yeah, it does. Ironically, eating a lot does make that harder. And I think a lot of
mm,
people start working in a new field and maybe they stress eat. But for me, eating more is definitely definitely makes it harder. But
mm.
yeah, I want to. I think it'll be worthwhile in the long run.
Mm. Yeah. No, I've noticed because that's the thing. Working with people, food is such a surprisingly big vice for a lot of people. Like for some people, definitely just junk food, but for some people, just eating in general. And I find that it's two main things. It's either stress or sadness for most people. That when some people there was like their go-to when they were little to eat to feel better, and some people that they used to calm down somehow. And it's kind of interesting to see because you can see with some people that they can follow a routine, cutting routine, quite well. But when they get something else in life hits them, that's when they break the break the program, break the routine, and start eating a lot like that. But yeah, I know what you mean. Just maintaining the lean look and stuff for the gram, as you say. But I'm the same. I want to be in the game, and I also want to experiment. And it's a cool thing actually, like this routine with a. Well, I call it like a 60-ish hour fast. You start it Sunday evening and break it earlier on the Wednesday. Like the point is kind of just take 2 days of eating out. But that's the routine I came up with, that when I saw what happened to me with the kind of food addiction thing, I didn't do exactly that. But that's like kind of what I came up with. Like, okay, if I am to do it in a more structured way for someone else, this is probably what I do. And I tried it first myself. I did a cut like that. Only I did every other week because I wanted to cut a little slower that time. But yeah, worked well. And I like to throw in, by the way, when you get, I call it like a hammer fast, that you just hammer in one longer. When you see an opportunity for something, I'm gonna go on a trip, I'm gonna be driving a lot or something like that, you know. No, but I think people. The last thing I'd say about it is in a fed state, when you think about it, like the hunter state versus the fed state. When you're in the hunter state, you're gonna have to, the senses are gonna have to be turned up because on a primal level, you have to be ready to like maybe even hunt the prey, but look for food anyway. But when you're fed, now you're happy. Now you're taken care of. You can just sit there, digest the food. Now you're taken care of. You're not supposed to be out hunting now. So, because I think a lot of people just think of it even backwards like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think people have this analogy of gas in the car. So, I mean, to a certain extent, calories in the big picture meta do work like that, but people like take it literally. Like, if you want to drive your car, like pretty much every week, or depending on what you drive, you have to just go put gas in the car first, and immediately after that, you just go
Mm,
drive your car at maximum performance. That's how cars work. It's not quite how people work. I mean, you're already fueled up. You have plenty of fuel in your body. You're eating for, like you said, a little bit more long term than like, okay, I want to do something now. Yeah, it'd be like if you have to well, in some ways it's almost more like getting your oil changed or doing some sort of maintenance to make sure that your car continues to run well. That's more like what eating I think is, and people need to understand that. I mean, you see that all the time on social media, people saying that you shouldn't diet because your body needs fuel, but it already has fuel in most cases, unless you're exceedingly thin. You already have plenty of fuel, and you're more eating, for future performance, whether that mean to build muscle or just maintain the state you're in, so that you can do something later. But yeah,
Mm.
I would tend to agree with that. And it's interesting that you hit on the 68 roughly. And I'm not strict about this either, but yeah, 68 I like. Everyone wants to make it multiples of 24 because that's the day cycle, but
Yeah.
yeah, I do the exact same thing.
Mm.
I like to instead of like instead of setting it up to where it's exactly 24 hours, I just stop eating at the time I normally would on the last day of my eating. Wake up the next day, don't eat. Wake up the next day, don't eat, and then break it not fairly in the evening, like fairly close to bed, because I know for me and my digestive system definitely needs some time to warm up to eating. I don't necessarily want to be eating a full day's worth of food. I just want to have a little bit
Mm.
of bone broth first, a little bit of lean protein, and kind of give that some time to sit, get my digestive system to warm up, and then wake up the next day, and then I'm good to go. So I found that works. I think we're on the same page with that. We found the same thing to work well. I don't do those multiples of 24 either.
Yeah, yeah. First, I did that because that's all I heard on 24, 48, 72. But I found that then I'm either gonna start it in the evening and break it in the evening, or start it in the morning and then kind of go all day without eating on that day, and I might feel hungry or something, So and also it's actually for the routine with kind of food addiction reversal effect. It's almost not necessarily psychological, but it's kind of like instead of like I'm gonna fast for this amount of hours, it's kind of like no 2 days of eating are just taken out. So it's supposed to. I'm trying to make the person feel as if they're not fasting almost because on the other days they're gonna eat on the day they start the fast. They're gonna eat the way they usually do. On the day when they break the fast, they're gonna eat the way they usually do. Like you say, maybe start a bit smaller, but pretty much, so that when they go through some cycles, weeks of that, now it's gonna be breeze to just go back to doing pretty much the same thing, but not fasting anymore. So yes, but okay, I think we've gotten to all the big major things I wanted to talk about, so I think we're going to round off soon. But since we talked about fasting, maybe just give a little short, tell me a little bit about just your diet philosophy, like kind of oh, I just want to tell you, do you know what I want? That's what I wanted to say. My favorite food to break the fast with is pickled herring, a very Swedish thing, but it's a lean protein and I just naturally I crave pickled things. That's the thing I crave the most when I fast. To me, it kind of makes sense. Something digestive system getting reset, craving some something for the gut microbiome. So I usually start with a little bit of potatoes and pickled herring and maybe some pickles even. Just start it small. Let that digest for a bit, and then I'm gonna eat more. But yes, please just tell me a little bit about what your diet looks like.
That's really interesting. I haven't tried pickled herring, but I know
Amazing.
Mark Bell says he'll sometimes actually eat like pickles or some
Mm.
sort of like
Pickles are
food that's
amazing after fast
that's like
food.
zero that's like 0 calorie during his fast, because you're not
Mm.
getting more energy out of them than they break down. He does that like in the middle of a fast, which sounds to me like it would be hard psychologically to start eating something, even if it technically has no calories. I mean, it's maybe I haven't really played around with it, but it's something he
I can
does,
tell you,
which is cool.
just because you
So
brought
maybe
that up, I can tell you that I have actually done that sometimes. To me, I don't know. Um, I think it's a salt. Do you take salts on the fast? Because sometimes I just felt like I take salts, but it's not the same. Just taking them, just drinking them. Like it feels good for a while, but I feel like you mostly just pee it out. It's something when you eat that little pickle, I feel like it sticks to me more, but it's barely any calories. To me, it's not that big of an issue actually to do that because I don't know, psychologically, I think I don't even count it as like real food because it's barely any calories. To actually eat something, I don't know, eat a little sausage or something, that would be difficult and it would be counterintuitive anyway. But yeah, actually done that.
yeah, I haven't tried that. I take usually Element. I like the chocolate one because it feels a little bit more substantial. That feels like kind of a meal. So I do take Element on days when I'm fasting. It gets a lot of criticism for being, overpriced, and I mean, it totally is.
Mm,
But and people will tell you, okay, you can just like make your own formula. Yeah, but I can't make it taste like chocolate. So it's just
mm,
having to, and if it's all I'm eating for the day, I can afford it.
mm.
I actually, speaking of Mark Bell, his supplement company within you has a basically their own version, which is more or less similar, but it's like 30% cheaper. So that's what I usually go with now. But yeah, it's same basic idea. But yeah, I found that helps. I think it probably helps with performance and maybe satiety. But yeah, I haven't tried actually eating anything. That sounds crazy, but I'm not doubting you or I just it seems like it would be hard to me. But maybe I'll try it one of these days. Maybe on a shorter fast, just to experiment with it. But yeah, as far as my overall diet philosophy, it's like a really loose, unstrict paleo.
Mm.
Like if I have, as far as like a go-to resource on what people ought to eat, for the most part, I've been a longtime follower of Mark Siston's blog, Mark's Daily Apple. He's in the paleo space. His philosophy is based on like what humans are, have evolved to eat based on what the evolutionary environment would be. But he's really nuanced and chill and not like dogmatic. Like so many of these carnivore guys are just so they attach so much ego and identity into like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm the guy who eats, raw liver. I'm so hardcore. Meanwhile, they like are like, it's like, okay, what are your athletic accomplishments? I ate
Mm,
liver. Oh, yeah, but like, what can you do? I eat raw liver. Like, okay, but do you do anything? And
mm,
he's former endurance runner or not endurance runner or triathlete rather, endurance athlete. So so like, I think that helps people in the diet space. Same thing with Sean Baker, who is carnivore, but he's not
mm.
he's not one of these extremists about it. I think having like actual athletic accomplishments helps you to not put too much emphasis on just like a diet identity. It's the people that are
Mm,
most DYEL do you even let that are the most annoying about
mm.
making the diet their identity, whether they're vegan, carnivore, or whatever the
Yeah,
case
yeah.
may be. I'm so hardcore. I ate meat that hadn't been cooked. Okay, that's easy. Your ancestors have been doing that. You're supposed to think raw meat tastes good, dummy. It's like it's not. You're not hardcore for eating something that humans are literally designed to eat. Why don't you go try lifting or doing or running or doing something athletic? And if you want to be, proud of yourself, like people were even the carnivore name is it's like vultures eat meat too. Like you talk about carnivore, people picture lions, and okay, everyone respects lions, but it's not because of their diet, it's because they're
Mm,
powerful animals that can do things. People also respect wildebeest, and the wildebeest eats grass, and the
mm,
vulture also eats meat. And, vultures are an important part of nature, but they're not. That's not what you think of when you think of carnivore. But
mm.
they eat the same diet as the lion, more or less. It's what you do that you should be taking your pride from. But yeah, I'm none of that's to talk about being anti-meat. I'm, very pro meat-based diet. It's abundantly clear that that's the diet that most human populations throughout history relied very heavily on animal foods. I think you just cannot make a good faith argument that that's not the case. And that being said, I'm not, they've also used plants wherever applicable, wherever that's feasible for them, and some populations rely quite heavily on plants, although never exclusively. I think so. Yeah, I'm very loosely paleo, but I'm not out here looking for food sensitivities. Like, oh, could this or that be like something I'm actually really sensitive to? I don't have a lot of these people have like Munchausen's over this stuff. Like I eat sourdough bread and okay, that's fine. In fact, I eat like treats and candy and that's fine. Not like
Mm.
all the time. I'm not just like, eating a bunch of candy all the time. But, if my kids get it or something, I'll eat some with them.
Sure.
Just, especially, if I'm bulking and I need, some post workout carbs,
Mm,
it's whatever. But, the majority of the fundamentals are going to be lots and lots and lots of red meat, dairy, obviously the good stuff that we know works, fruits and berries. I think, obviously fruits are something that, I know some bodybuilders are afraid of fructose, but I mean, it's fairly clear that, humans I mean, we come from common ancestors that ate fruit heavily. The, chimpanzee population still, subsists heavily on fruit. Every hunter-gatherer tribe that has fruits accessible takes advantage of that. And, bodybuilders throughout history have tended to, think that carbs are, fairly good for muscle building and whatnot. So it makes sense to eat some fruit, get some vitamins and, carbohydrates and, and then if you eat some regular food, you can if you have larger muscles, you can tolerate a lot more sugar, because it all breaks down to sugar than somebody who doesn't have any muscles. So, yeah, I mean, eating a bunch of carbohydrates might be bad for sedentary people, sure, but we have something to do with it. So, we're fine. But in general, I think people worry way too much about diet composition because ultimately your body's not going to adapt to, or your fitness level, your muscle, your strength, none of that adapts to your diet. Your body's designed to adapt to exercise and, being used. So then all that matters is just giving it something it can work with, and that doesn't have to be as complicated as people think. There's no dietary secret that's going to make you jacked. Like nothing you can eat is going to signal to your body, "Hey, our environment needs us to have big biceps." That doesn't exist. There's no bicep food. You go to the gym, and then just eat something that isn't terrible, and that'll probably work for you. But where I think it matters more is just staying lean and then having like tons of animal protein, something that you both want to eat, but also satiates you and stops you eating is ideal. And just for most people, that's going to be meat, right? I mean, most people like steak. I mean, steak. Even people who don't give a damn about fitness will pay extreme amounts of money for a really good steak, right? So we like steak, but after you eat a ribeye, almost everybody is done. No one wants to eat anymore. So it's a pretty good way to get you to want to eat enough, but not too much, and then stop eating. Whereas if you just came in and ate a bunch of, processed food, you're not going to get those satiety signals. So it's kind of a no-brainer if you want to make fitness easy. It's eat things that make you stop eating, you know?
Yeah, no, I have I like that. It's very just a common sense approach to it all. And I agree, like it isn't so very complicated, honestly. And or well, yeah, about the carbs and also like some candy and stuff. I realize it more and more. The longer I've done this, that it's kind of contextual, what's like good nutrition and not. And I often take as an example like fruit juice. Like I love orange juice. I drink a lot of it, especially now when bulking. I have so much in my fridge right now. And for me, I just feel like it's kind of rocket fuel. It's like easy carbs. They're very easy for me to get in. And I often crave it after like a sweaty workout. That's when I like, gotta get that and take it with some salt. But if you're a sedentary pre-diabetic person, you should probably stay away from that. But even candy, like glucose-based candy, with preferably with as like few additives as possible. Of course, you don't want to have that as like your main carb source or something, but every once in a while, for the fit, active person, it's not really that unhealthy. It's kind of crazy, that, yeah, what's a good food for you? Like it's very contextual, and I never would have thought, because when I got into fasting and this kind of lifestyle, I am the kind of person that I almost have to go to extreme to one end first to kind of notice that, I didn't have to be quite that extreme. But even more so now when bulking, I've been eating a bunch of chocolate every once in a while. Not even the best kind, honestly. But just because it's easy energy for me. And it's all, again, it's different if all I eat is chocolate. And if I have like a healthy foundation, I eat my meat, eggs, some fruit, some vegetables, and then to like get into a surplus, throw some chocolate on there. So no, I like that. Keeping it simple. But yeah, man, I think we're gonna round off here. I just wanna ask you if there's anything you'd like to bring up or ask me even before we go.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked a ton about fitness, but I'm just kind of curious how you feel things are in Sweden right now because I feel like things are like the world's kind of going crazy, and in
Mm,
America, I just want, and I it seems like maybe things are way better over there. I'm a little bit more curious about where you live, to be honest with you. Just what your
mhm.
just kind of your take on.
Sure. I didn't expect that, but because
No.
the funny thing is that before I got into all of this, I was a very angry, like right-wing extremist kind of person. I was very upset about everything about the immigration and feminism and blah blah blah, all that. And I was like, not that there's not things to criticize about that, but I was like actually falling into being hateful and stuff. So, I cared a lot more before then. The way I see it, though, is that I projected all the chaos I felt inside on society, because now I see many of the same problems. I just don't feel that worried about it. Honestly, man, like I've disconnected so much from even, I don't even follow news or things so much. I've noticed that, of course, like you don't want to be completely like, I don't care about anything, but you can no matter what's going on out there, you can very often you can live a good life for yourself anyway. So, I'm happy with my life situation. Honestly, I don't even think too much about where we're heading or anything right now, because, well, I guess I'm not really that optimistic about how things are going, and I don't know if I'm even going to live here in the future. So I already tried living in Greece for a year. I'd like to go somewhere sunnier and maybe have a little base to come back here. But the way I see it is, the Christian saying "in the world, not of it." I sometimes do a variation of that when I say "in the clown world, not of it." So every once in a while I go on Twitter and I see the left and the right like yapping at each other, and like I see left wing, right wing there. I'm chicken wing. Like I don't think about these things so much anymore. So yeah, that's the way I feel about it right now.
I'm surprised to hear Greece being your escape plan. I thought it was kind of just in a really bad situation economically. No.
Yeah, yeah. But if you can have a like foreign salary when you live there, you can have a pretty good situation going for you. So
Huh, that's interesting. I think that in a lot of ways, California is kind of like that because where I live in Los Angeles, it's insanely expensive. Like to buy a house in the neighborhood that I live in would be, I mean, closer to $2 million than one. It's just completely unaffordable, but at the same time, kind of just a zombie apocalypse out there from you know drug addicted homeless people running amok. Not to mention gang violence and whatnot. Um, but then if you can take that salary to somewhere remote where the economy really isn't, because there's a lot of parts of California that where it's really just not much economy, then it can actually be surprisingly affordable. So if you can kind of do the remote thing, then you can
mm,
kind of get away from it all. Of course, we have fires, so usually you get away from the economy and you get the affordable cost of living, then everything you could just die in a gigantic wildfire.
mm,
But yeah, I guess that's why it's on my mind. I'm just you
mm,
know it, things. I mean, where I live, I'm just kind of confronted by some of the decline, and I'm
mm.
just that's why I get curious how things are in other places.
I, I get that, and I guess here it's so segregated too, because I read about a lot of things, and I can see statistics that like shootings and gang violence is kind of crazy here too, but nowhere close to where I am. Like here in Stockholm, my part of the city, it's like, yeah, I don't notice anything from this, of course, and I don't want to be the guy that's like that's why I don't care about that. That's not the point, but it's not something I see at all. And yeah, I've been to LA, by the way, but it was 10 years ago, and I mostly smoked weed and drank a lot. Went to parties where everyone wanted to become like a singer or an artist or whatever. That's kind of what I remember from LA. The girls were very flirty when I was walking the street, to which no, I'm not used to here at all. But yeah, that's my little experience of LA.
Yeah, it was. I mean, as yeah, it was actually a lot different 10 years ago. It was a lot cleaner. I mean, not that there
Mhm.
weren't issues. There were obviously issues, but it's definitely deteriorated since then, rather dramatically. I don't want to get into the politics of why it's happened, but it's definitely we've had a lot of things that look like a some kind of a post-apocalyptic movie in terms of the like homeless encampments and just yeah, certain parts are just kind of no-go zones, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, that's it definitely changed since then. But yeah, I don't know why that's what I focus on. I just you talk to people from all over the world. You're curious about how things are in other
Mm,
places. A lot of times I do. I look across the pond to Europe, and it looks kind of I mean, not obviously Europe is not monolithic, but
mm,
especially Scandinavia. Just I have this kind of pristine vision, so I'm just always curious how much
mm,
that maps onto reality.
mm. And Sweden, out of Scandinavia, Sweden, we are definitely the most insane ones of all of them. Like all the Danes, the Norwegians, the Finns, they kind of laugh at us, thinking we're crazy. With all, everything you demand, all the political correctness kind of things, and even immigration. Like if you compare our numbers to just all, I think we've a higher immigration than like all the other ones together. And of course, we're the biggest country, but not by that much. So, no, but I think why I really focus so little on it now is because I used to focus on it so much. Like it consumed me completely. I would be that guy to wake up like, what is the latest thing on Twitter that I'm supposed to get
Yeah.
super upset about? And I think I'm just so happy to feel free from that. That's no, it's not that I don't care, but I don't feel this obsessive need to look at all these things that are out of my control anyway. Spend so much time and energy on that.
Oh, yeah, same here. I definitely, and that's why I try to keep my fitness content just fitness, and I'm not going to talk about politics because frankly, I don't want to be talking to an echo chamber of just people that you
Mm,
know, agree with me. I think it's better to share all this stuff, with people from all walks of life. And yeah, I don't necessarily neatly identify with any particular group anyway. So,
mm.
if even if I wanted to, it'd be hard to find, a good echo chamber that would work. But yeah, I try not to. Yeah, I mean, I try not to get like super specific as far as politics, but as far as just like
Mm,
general, general decay, yeah, I think a lot of people just. I know where I live, just every parent I run into at the park kind of agrees that things are going crazy, but we might not necessarily always agree on what the root of the problem is. But we, it's kind of like an ever present thing for most people here. That's just yeah. But I try not to focus on it too much, but at some point I have to find a place where I can actually feel good raising my kids. So that's
mm,
kind of the challenge to find somewhere that's a little bit more ideal.
mm. No, of course. Do you know that you can't, it's not legal to homeschool your kids in Sweden. Yeah, it's
Oh my God.
illegal. And a thing like that, I think most Swedes don't think about it like that. But how crazy is that really? That no, you have to give your children away for the most part of the day to the state, and where they have to be exposed to certain things. It's like, yeah, it's a little indoctrination camp, really. And yeah, that's a reason that I'll see what happens in my life, but that's one thing that I don't like thinking about having kids here.
Yeah, that's creepy. That yeah. I mean, I think in that way, a lot of. I mean, um, we still have certain traditional. We at least pay lip service to
Mm,
certain freedoms in the United States, even if they get eroded. And that's one that we do have. I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to do, just because it is a uh, big time investment. But I'd like to. I'm open to it. It's like here we had because we do have homeschooling. Like traditionally, it was just people who it was usually people who had like some kind of really strong religious conviction or something. And, in a lot of cases, the homeschooled kids got seen as weirdos back in the day when I was growing up because, most people just didn't think to do that. But, I think these days, a lot of people are just not very trusting of the system. So, maybe even people that aren't necessarily religious or don't even necessarily have any kind of strong politics or anything like that are just choosing to do it just out of sheer distrust for the system, which I like.
mm,
I think regardless of what you end up believing about it, If you distrust it, we're on the same page on that. So
Mm, yeah.
yeah, I think ideally if you can form kind of like co-ops of people that are can do it together and lighten the load and just give your kids that social interaction. That's ideal. So fortunately, the state still allows us to do that, which is nice. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, we're probably I don't know why I brought that up. I'm probably getting way off topic for anything that your viewers are interested in. I don't know why that's what popped in my head. I should have thought of a better question to start with.
No,
But yeah,
like,
your curiosity goes where it goes.
yeah, no, I think you're being self-critical sometimes when you talk. There was a fine question, but I think it's time we round off here. So my closing words would be that I think you're a really cool guy. Like I'm very being kind of a special person myself. I always like people, the way I put it, like distinct individuals, that really are doing their own thing. And that's what I see with you, both kind of your methodology when it comes to training. It's not exactly mainstream at all. Um, and some takes even you give on different things. They're definitely your own. I'm not like, oh, he's in that, he belongs to that group. No, no, that this is Atlas's take. I'm reading now, and clearly you have the results to show it for. So, yeah, no, it's been great talking to you, man. And yeah, I guess we'll keep following each other and staying in touch. And yeah, any final words to the viewers before we go?
Well, thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed this. It's been a very good conversation, and I like your style of just it was very conversational, very let's just go get into depth on whatever we're both interested in. I think we have common ground on a whole lot. So I really enjoyed this, and I appreciate you having me on. I always appreciate someone who can because YouTube is sometimes it is a struggle. I remember you talking to GVS about this in his episode. You guys were talking about this. It could be a struggle to just talk to a camera and
Mm,
get your ideas out in a way that's coherent. And have talking to you, I think it helps me to you know structure what I'm saying better. And it's just good to have conversation with like minded people. So I really appreciate that. And you know, thanks for having me on, man. It's like I will definitely be eager to see your success in the future, and what you find in this industry is. I think you found a lot of really good stuff. It's obviously working really well, so we'll keep exploring and keeping in touch about what we find.
yeah, man, I appreciate that, and I'll tell you, I think you should trust your intuition more when you talk, and don't question yourself so much. Like, oh, am I talking too much? So much? It was a great conversation for me as well. So, yes, thank you for this time, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Peace.